Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Elmhurst City Council. Today is Monday, June 7th, 2010. If we could all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And to make this official City Council meeting official, I'd ask Clerk Spencer to call the roll, please.
Gutenkopf.
Here.
Peasant.
Here.
Shea.
Here.
Leader.
Here.
Rose.
Here.
Graham.
Here.
Pipskin.
Here.
York.
Here.
Nybo.
Here.
Keeley.
Here.
Morley.
Here.
Kennedy.
Here.
Mulliner. Absent. Wagner.
Here.
13 present, 1 absent.
13 present, 1 absent. We have an official quorum. At this time, I will go on to a proclamation for Bike to Work Week, and I ask Mr. Bob Holt to meet me at the podium over here to my right for the proclamation, please. As many people know, we are trying to make Elmhurst a bike-friendly town. Mr. Hull has been the chair of the task force that Mayor Marcucci put in place a couple of years ago to look at different ways we can improve Elmhurst as a bike-friendly community. And with that, this proclamation I am proud to read here. Whereas bicycle commuting is an effective means to improve our air quality, reduce traffic congestion and noise, and to conserve energy. Whereas the City of Elmhurst has created a bike task force advisory board to increase bike use in Elmhurst. And whereas Elmhurst has made a commitment to stop global warming by joining the Elmhurst Cool Cities Coalition, whose pledge includes reducing gasoline use by riding a bike. And whereas the education of cyclists and motorists as to the proper and safe operation of and with regard to bicycles is important to ensure the safety and comfort of all users. And whereas bicycle commuting benefits both employees and employers through better employee health and fitness, reduced commuting, parking, and health care costs, lower employee absenteeism and turnover, and increased employee productivity. And whereas bike to work days have proven effective in converting drivers into bicyclists and educating residents about the environmental importance of biking to work regularly. Now therefore, I, Peter P. DeCiani III, Mayor of the City of Elmhurst, do hereby proclaim June 12th through June 18th, 2010 as Bike to Work Week in the City of Elmhurst, and ask all residents to consider biking as an alternative to driving. Mr. Hull, congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for this proclamation on behalf of the Elmhurst Bike Task Force. It sends a very strong message to our community, encouraging them to bike those short errands around town, especially when we're in a town that is a very built environment where parking is at a premium. A bike takes up 1/10 the space as a car would. So again, thank you very much. Now, just so that the council knows, within the next couple of days, this poster will be seen all around town, advertising the Bike to Work and Bike to Metro Week. And in addition, very timely, our very first Bike to Metro brochure has been completed, providing maps as to the best way to get to the metro station from the different areas of Elmhurst. Again, thank you.
Let's have a little round of applause for Mr. Hull, who's definitely taken up this cause. Thank you, Bob. All righty. Next up on the agenda is item 3, written communications and petitions from the public. At this time, if there are any written communications and/or petitions from the public, if you would please present those to City Clerk Spencer at this time, that would be great. Anybody else? You see we have one person putting something in here into the record. Anybody else with any written communications and/or petitions? Please present that to City Clerk Spencer, please. Okay. Looks like everybody's gotten those in. And item 4, which is the public forum portion of our meeting. That's where people from Elmhurst have up to 3 minutes to express their views on any particular issue. We do have a sensitive issue on the agenda tonight, which has been up here probably for its 3rd or 4th time, and it's Gladys Sidewalks. I know we have a lot of people here, and we do have some time limitations. And being that we've already heard from the Gladys folks, I would ask that if the Gladys side, for the pros and the cons to this issue, if you could pick maybe 3 to 4 speakers instead of having 20 or 30, that would be preferable. And I would say 3 to 4 on each side of the issue. And this way we can hear your concerns, and at the same time we keep on task with the meeting. And then any other issues outside of Gladys, please raise your hand and I'll call on you. So if you want to take a few minutes to figure out who those people might be that will be discussing the issues, I'd say 4 people pro, 4 people con. That would give sufficient information to the council and keep the meeting orderly. I would also ask that we do not have cheering or booing or anything that would be out of, I would say, what we would consider citizenly in Elmhurst happen. So this should not be a time to be cheering or daunting one side or the other. So, okay. At this time, Alderman Pezza.
I just had a quick question. I know this is going to be everybody's probably last chance to speak to this, and I appreciate they all spoke already. But I also appreciate what it's like to come to a meeting and want to speak and have something to say, and I think that's their right. I'd hate to only limit it to 3 people. I don't think that's really fair. That's just my personal opinion as one alderman. I don't know if we could expand it to more and maybe instead of 3 minutes, 2, I don't know, just some type of way to let people say their last final words of peace, I guess.
I'll do 5 on each side, in fairness to what Alderman Pezza is asking for. 3 minutes from each side would be what I would see would be adequate. Again, this is the 3rd or 4th meeting where we've had people here talking about this issue. The last meeting we did have an outburst, and I will not tolerate that in this room. If somebody makes an outburst, they will ask them to leave. We do have a uniformed police officer in the room as well who will make sure that that happens. So we must act in decorum. I will run the meeting, and we will make sure that people are fair in how we exchange communications. So at this time, I would ask for people to show, anybody who would like to speak regarding the issues, regarding Gladys or any other issue. If you'd like to please raise your hand, I'll call on you, and if you could please state your name and your address, you'd have 3 minutes at that time. Mr. Rebelletti?
John Rebelletti, 625 Gladys. I would like to know why everything about this sidewalk was so secretive in this building. If it wasn't for me coming here to ask a simple question from the engineer and about the sidewalk, and he said, well, we can't do that sidewalk because it costs too much. But we were told to make another plan. And then he told me about this 3 feet of narrowing the street. And I said, well, make sure you send a letter to the people on the other side of the street. And he said, well, I'll have to ask. And I told him, don't ask anybody, because I'm going upstairs to get a petition. And when I went upstairs, the assistant city clerk told me she could not give me one. Took me downstairs, and I talked to the woman, and she told me they can't give me one. But she also told me if we print out one, it is legal, and they would take all the names and numbers, and if they had to, they would call them. And I want to know why 39 people in this, to their 16, and there was 2 people that don't want to be involved in this because they're pretty new in the neighborhood. Also, I want to know if this city has a democracy. I served my country twice for democracy and freedom. And anybody up there who can tell me my no vote and 38 other houses of no votes don't count, I would like them to tell the media why. And also about children's safety, do what my wife and all the other mothers on that block that their children grew up there, and you knew a lot of them, Mr. Mayor. We don't need sidewalks. I don't want our street narrowed on a 39 majority vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rebelletti. Anyone else?
Excuse me, everybody that's against the sidewalk narrowing of our street, please raise your hand. Thank you.
Very good. Anyone else that is against this that'd like to speak? The woman with her hand up in the red? Hi.
Hi, my name is Chris Pollack. I live at 648 West Gladys Avenue. I would like to thank those of you who have talked to me on the telephone in the past week. I was not going to get up here and speak. I don't do this very well in public, but I'm going to give it my best shot. I'm against narrowing our street because the back end of our block in the 600 block floods severely during heavy storms. It goes up four houses so far. A narrower street is just going to bring that up even further and possibly affect my house and other neighbors. I know people have flooded from this. This just doesn't seem fair to narrow a street and cause other people housing problems. Now, as to narrowing a street and having emergency vehicles get down it, I know firsthand that when I've had an ambulance to my house for my mother, and also when I had the fire department checking out a gas leak at our house, that cars that were parked on the north side of the street stopped any other vehicle from getting past. Cars had to turn around and go the opposite direction in order to get to their homes. This can happen. If cars are parked on both sides of the street, I very, very much doubt that a fire department truck is going to get through and help anybody. I'm very scared of this. Now, this is firsthand knowledge twice over for me. The other thing that I'm very upset about is putting a sidewalk 3 feet from a curb. I have had firsthand experience. I almost killed a child on that block, and it was not because there were, it was not because there was a lack of a sidewalk. It was because there were no adults out there at all. I'm still upset for this. I did this 2 years ago. I am afraid that a sidewalk 2 feet from a curb with a child who plays in the moment, who will run out after a ball, or who will just run across the street to visit their friend, or who will just decide, and this has happened twice this month, a little 4-year-old ran out and yelled, "Stop! We're playing here. Go back the other way. You can't drive here." Where were the adults? They were not there. Somebody has to take responsibility for these children. I have 2 young sons that drive. Other neighbors have young sons and daughters who drive. There's a lot of young people on my end of the block. I don't need them to live the rest of their lives worrying about whether or not they kill a child because the sidewalk's too close to a street. If you put a sidewalk where it belongs, God help you, that's where it belongs. But do not put a sidewalk 2 feet from a street. That is just not safe. And I, like I said, would have found it difficult to live the rest of my life knowing I killed a child. I don't want my kids to have to go through that, ever. Now, you can check this. There is an incident report on this. I feel very strongly about this. So, thank you very much. I appreciate your listening to me.
Thank you, Mrs. Pollack. It's obviously very passionate about what you're talking about, so we appreciate that. Anybody else that would be on the against? The woman in the back there?
Hi, my name is Diana Pagach, 566 West Gladys. The city manager has stated that the sidewalk installation policy is more of a guideline than a standard. The guideline is in fact part of the city code in regards to sidewalk installation. The homeowners on the north side of Gladys petitioned the city for sidewalks on their side of the street. This council, with the vote of the mayor, voted to install the sidewalk. They based their vote on the installation costs given them by the city staff and on the belief they would be installed by the city code. Through further evaluation of this installation, city staff found that the cost on which the project was voted on was invalid, and the cost increased from $160,000 to $280,000. When this was found to be true, neither the homeowners nor any alderman was informed of this change. The fact is, the city staff proceeded with a new design that now involved the narrowing of the street and the relocation of the sidewalk 2 feet from the back of the new curb. Again, neither the homeowners nor any alderman was informed of this change. The homeowners of both sides of the street were sent a letter informing them of a meeting on May 12, 2010. At this meeting was the first time the homeowners and their local aldermen were informed of this new plan for the sidewalk, requiring the narrowing of Gladys. The homeowners of Gladys started a petition. 39 homeowners from both sides of Gladys signed the petition stating they had no wish to have their street narrowed. The total number of homes on Gladys is 57. This petition was given to the city clerk on May 17, 2010. We, the homeowners of Gladys Avenue, hold that after a true plan is beyond what the members of this council originally voted on, that the council members should have been informed of the increased cost on their original vote, that the homeowners on the north side of the street should have been informed of the increased cost. We ask that the council members consider the petition of the 39 homeowners not to narrow the street. We also ask that because of the invalid information given to them on the cost and the radical design change, that they vote to end this project. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else that would like to speak against the sidewalks? Gentleman here up here in the front.
Hi, my name is Richard Hoffman, 605 West Gladys. Just want to make sure the council does have a chance to listen to all of the messages tonight, and the fact that we seem to be going to those against it first doesn't mean we don't have the last word. You know, the lone argument that the proponents have used for their push for sidewalks is safety, and no one can argue with safety. However, I refer you to the meeting minutes of your February 27th, 2006 Public Works Committee meeting, in which Director Hughes is specifically quoted as saying, "From a long-term planning and safety point of view, the sidewalks should be located at the furthest point from the roadway, within the right-of-way. This would open up a safe right-of-way for pedestrians and create a normal parkway." The entire committee that night agreed completely with that statement, and that's why the ordinance was changed, or I should say the policy was changed in 2006, in fact, to include a requirement for the sidewalks to be installed 1 foot off the property line. So I ask you to bring this whole issue about SSA 12 to conclusion tonight. It's been 22 months that we've been up here talking about this topic. I ask the entire council to unanimously accept the recommendation of the Public Works and Buildings Committee in today's report, and that is to cancel the ordinance. You've heard a number of reasons. I'm going to summarize them again. Sidewalks cannot be delivered within the funding that was established for the ordinance, according to the policies that are in effect today. Street reconstruction is outside the scope of the SSA. I would have to question if any funds were diverted from a sidewalk ordinance to pay for a street reconstruction project, whether that would be a misappropriation of funds. And you've heard that the Gladys Avenue residents have overwhelmingly, by a 2/3 majority, have rejected the notion of reducing the size of the street. You know, SSAs are supposed to deliver a benefit. Reducing the size of the street, you've heard it loud and clear, is a detriment. Let me reinforce that last year, when we voted on this topic in July, 7 of the aldermen and the mayor voted for the sidewalks. And in fact, some of you specifically called out in your discussion that the proponents followed the process that's defined in the sidewalk policy. That's why you voted for their position. And you know what? You were probably correct in doing so. However, this alternate design is in direct contrast to the same policy.
You got
So
a little over 3 minutes. I'll give you 10 seconds, and you can wrap it up.
So I ask you to listen to your policy, to cancel the SSA Ordinance 12 because it cannot be delivered in what it was expected to deliver.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Mr. Hoffman. Thank you, Mr. Hoffman. And one more on the no side, or if you want to wrap up on the no, or I can, however you want to do it. Mr. DeMando and Mr. Claude, why don't you figure out who would like to speak? There's two people with their hands up. Who would like to speak out of you two? Okay.
My name is Claude Pagach. I live at 566 West Gladys, and we are here once again. We are here because of a petition, and because 39 people honestly believe that they have a right to petition this council. We have heard often from the city manager, with the consent of the alderman, the city will proceed. You gave your consent on a petition for a given set of parameters. You were never again consulted. Not your committee, not the aldermen in our area, but the city proceeded. You have a set of standards, a set of rules. You try to adhere to them, because in the overall, they have proven to be the best solution to problems that are eventually presented to all of you, from the city manager, from the mayor, from your fellow aldermen. And when that system is modified and changed and altered, then you're left out of the system. You will then be confronted by what you are confronted here. An endless discussion on a subject. We may both be right, and I will grant you after this evening, none of us will be satisfied. But if you can't follow your own rules and your own procedures, and you feel that once you have voted for something, it has left and can be handled any way that someone other than you give your consent to, then what is your consent worth? That is really the basis of all of this. You were elected to represent. You're having a difficult time representing people tonight, because they may all have both sound arguments of why. But you will have to make that decision. I do not in any way wish I was in your position tonight. It's one of the difficult things to say no to somebody.
You're over
Said
3 minutes.
once.
You can wrap it up, Claude. That'd be great. I'll give you 10 more seconds. We're well over 3 minutes.
Said once you would go over the sidewalk by the rules. Well, you're presented rules again. I hope you adhere to them and at least consider our position and our petition.
Thank you, Claude. Anyone else? Mr. DeMando? And that'll be it for the sidewalk no's, and then we'll enter into the sidewalk yeses for open forum.
Rich DeMando, 568 West Avenue, corner of West and Gladys. I'm not going to rehash everything you've already know and you've already heard others say, but I would like to say I firmly believe the council should follow the recommendation of their own Public Works and Buildings Committee, along with the overwhelming majority of Gladys Avenue residents, to halt this sidewalk project and to cancel the current SSA. I would also like to take some of this time to address a letter that has circulated the neighborhood recently, and I know some of the council members are aware of this. And I think it's necessary to publicly condemn this type of anonymous character assassination. This letter contains an ounce of truth surrounded by lies and false accusations. And I strongly disagree with any notion that Pete would exploit autistic children or children in general. I have known Pete since he himself was a child. And although we have our differences, I know that this is a lie. In fact, if anything, it's the group who's trying to push this through who are guilty of trying to exploit Pete's true passion and desire to improve the quality of life for autistic and special needs children everywhere. And we've even heard them blame children's obesity on the lack of sidewalks. But that's enough on that. In closing, I'd like to ask the council to consider this one question before they vote. If these folks truly believe that sidewalks are critical to the safety and well-being of their children, if they truly believe that the conditions on this block are so dangerous, why in the world would they buy a home in a neighborhood with no sidewalks? And if safety really is the issue, why would you buy a home on such a dangerous street? And where were the considerations for these issues that they raise now when they were spending $750,000 and up on these homes? This really makes me question their motives. Again, I ask the council to follow the recommendations of their own committee, put a halt to this SSA, and cancel the sidewalk project. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Demando. All right, and the folks that are for sidewalks, if you'd like to speak at this time, if you would raise your hand, please state your name and address as well. There we go.
Alina Cahill, 569 Gladys. From the start of the sidewalk process, safety has been our primary concern. I would like to touch on a few points. Over the last year, we have been walking our kindergartner to Emerson and our preschooler to Mary Queen of Heaven, using the street as our path. We are not the only ones. According to the last school directory, there were 23 children enrolled in Emerson living on Gladys. There was a student far down the north side. Are you to deny this child safe passage because she lives on the west side of the block? I have counted 17 children below the school age, making it at least 40 kids under the age of 12. Churchville and York students also walk to meet their buses. We live in a community that aims to promote healthy lifestyles for all and yet is failing to provide them a safe way of doing so. As for the narrowing of the street, misinformation has been running rapid. I in particular prefer to check statements out personally. We have had fears involving the access of emergency vehicles. My family has required the use of emergency services on multiple occasions. When I've passed out on our front lawn of internal bleeding and when my husband's diabetic episode resulted in seizures and unresponsiveness. I know and value firsthand the need for appropriate EMS access. I measured these vehicles. As the city engineers have assured us, the plan clearly allows for their passage and the fear is unfounded. As for the revised width, I've measured the length of our street at approximately 10 points with a variability of less than 1%. I also measured Fremont, a street that is undeniably more busy and allows for parking on both sides. This is just a clear example of what 3 feet of narrowing looks like. As city engineers have repeatedly stated, the revised width is well within the Elmhurst standards, providing parking and safety for all. In further fact-finding, the EPA has posted several benefits of narrowing streets. There is a linear relationship between street width and the speed at which cars travel. Many cities have actually purposely narrowed their streets in what is called a traffic calming technique. We have seen cars fly down our long downhill street, and while the narrowing of the street was never part of the original plan, it will provide added safety for both sides of Gladys. The EPA has also cited additional benefits, including lower accident rates, lower maintenance costs, reduction of street pollutants, and less storm water runoff. I doubt these overwhelming facts were presented to those writing comments or those asked to sign a petition circulated prior to the informational meeting. Change is inevitable in any growing committee. Just since your last vote, there have been 3 children under the age of 4 added to the Gladys population, and another anticipated this summer. The proposed changes will increase pedestrian safety for all, ultimately reduce city maintenance costs, and keep to the existing standards for emergency access. We hope that you will consider these facts when moving forward with sidewalks. I thank the council for their attention in this matter.
Thank you, Miss. Anyone else that would like to speak on behalf of Mr. Del Rio?
Fernando Del Rio, 541 West Gladys. When we started this process to obtain new sidewalks over 2 years ago, I never would have imagined that some aldermen would disregard city rules and policies and claim that the policies in place are simply guidelines that can be amended at their discretion. I'm concerned that tonight's vote could have a far-reaching chilling effect that will discourage other residents in Elmhurst from investing time and money to improve their community. Let me also point out that tonight's vote must only be on the revised sidewalk proposal and must exclude a vote on the SSA. I fear that Alderman Kennedy and Healy decided to combine these two items in the Public Works Committee report in an attempt to stop the entire sidewalk project. At the last Public Works meeting, the Director of Public Works, the City Attorney, and the City Manager had only positive comments regarding the revised sidewalk project, some of which were, the revised project is within the approved budget and within the scope of the approved SSA. The revised street width will not pose any dangers. Emergency vehicles will not have any problems responding to homes on Gladys. The revised street width falls within 6 inches of the average Elmhurst street width. Some in Elmhurst are narrower. Some driveways will be better off with the new proposal than they currently are, and in no cases worse. Retaining walls will be significantly reduced, if not eliminated, and many less trees will be removed. Yet, for some unknown reason, the committee decided to exclude these facts from their report. Now, since it's been over 2 years, let's briefly review the sidewalk facts. We have met all the requirements as set forth by the city's policy. The City Council voted in favor of the new sidewalks in February of 2009 and the SSA in July of 2009. Per the City Attorney, the city's revised plan is legally in order and no new SSA is required. Any mention by the opposition that a new SSA is required is incorrect. The opposition will refer to a petition submitted to the city last month. You must disregard this petition for the following reasons. The city's policy for the installation of new sidewalks and Illinois state law does not permit for the opposition to file a second blocking petition. The opposition had their chance to block the sidewalk project and they failed in July of 2009. If you vote against the proposal tonight, you're not only violating the city's policies, but you're also violating state law. The city did not administer the petition or review the petition to ensure that the signatures were actual owners of record. The checks and balances that were present in the original sidewalk petition and in the failed blocking petition are glaringly absent in this petition. And 97% of the petition signatures were obtained prior to the open house. This begs the question, was the information conveyed correct and accurate to the people that signed the petition? The vote tonight is bigger than the sidewalks on Gladys. It is a statement on whether you follow the city's rules, policies, and procedures, whether you follow state law, and whether you govern with integrity.
If you could wrap it up, you're a little over 3 minutes. I'll give you another 10 seconds, Mr. Del Rio.
Is Elmhurst to be known as the Wild Wild West or as a law-abiding city? Furthermore, do you want to expose the city to potential legal liability if someone is seriously injured or killed as a result of your actions tonight? I ask for your continued support of our sidewalk project. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Del Rio. Anyone else that would like to speak in favor of this gentleman here? Go ahead.
Good evening. I'm Kyle Whitell at 585 Gladys, and I stand here very disappointed with the Public Works Committee recommendation. Mr. Del Rio did a great job summarizing the facts presented at the Public Works meeting, that there are no safety, engineering, or legal issues with the new sidewalk proposal or the SSA, yet none of this is reflected in the committee's recommendation. As elected officials, you should consider all of the facts when making your decision. I think we got to this point in part because we heard from Alderman Leader at the Public Works meeting, who was the only councilman on the dais that night, not on the committee other than the mayor. And we heard from Alderman Leader without incident, unlike when the mayor tried to speak, at which time the committee was so rudely chastised by a Gladys resident opposed to sidewalks that the police showed up. Should this type of persistent behavior be rewarded? To me, that scenario demonstrates that Mr. Leader did not attend that meeting as an alderman looking for due process, but rather as an advocate for the side he so long ago chose, exploiting his political influence in his crusade to derail the sidewalk project. What Alderman Leader suggested was that the SSA is invalid due to the change in design and that the full council should once again decide the fate of the Gladys sidewalks. Had he been there for the entire meeting, he would have heard City Attorney Storino indicate that the SSA was very much legally in order and that no action was necessary by the committee or the City Council. No action. The very fact that Alderman Leader questioned the validity of the SSA resurrects his history of questionable legal interpretation. In the North Avenue Route 83 zoning matter, the Elmhurst Independent quoted Alderman Leader as saying that once the letter of the law had been met, the city had no say in the matter, legal or otherwise. Yet 2 weeks later, when arguing against the Gladys sidewalks, he pleaded with this council to not let a strict interpretation of the letter of the law overrule the spirit of the law. Now, I'm as interested as anyone in how Alderman Leader will twist the law to his benefit in his pre-written speech tonight. But I'll ask this council, which is it? No one is disputing that everything we have done to obtain sidewalks is legally in order, so you should question and challenge Alderman Leader's suspect arguments and motives. Now, a lot is also being made about this petition, a piece of paper that purportedly indicates that a majority of residents do not want the street narrowed, but offer no credible reason why not. By voting against the current sidewalk proposal, you would be doing so not based on the merits of the proposal, but rather based solely on opinion and emotion, much of which was formed based on inaccurate facts. Before you do that, I ask you to consider this. Consider how that petition might look if the 40-plus children living on Gladys had a say in the matter. Would that petition still represent the majority? But these children are not being given a say. We in favor of sidewalks may only be from 15 homes, but we're trying to give these and future children a voice so that they can grow up safely in Elmhurst. A decision has already been made. You made the right decision for the right reasons. As a parent on Gladys, I ask that you stand behind that decision tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else that would speak on behalf of this woman here?
Angel Allen, 557 West Gladys. Throughout this process, I have grown more and more frustrated by the tactics of the residents and from certain aldermen that are trying to halt this process that we have successfully and legally completed. We are tired of being bullied and made out to be villains for trying to do what we feel is best for our children and community. The statements that have been made that I am just as safe walking my 2 young children in the street rather than on a sidewalk is ludicrous. We have been made to feel like guests in our own neighborhood as some people from the opposition refer to us as, quote, those 15 homes that moved into our neighborhood. I didn't realize that Gladys was owned and run by certain long-term residents. Everyone works hard for their home, and we should not be discriminated against because of perceived notions by others. I think one thing that people have failed to realize is that this sidewalk debate is much bigger than 15 homes on Gladys Avenue. It is a community movement that has been going on for years. Over the past 5 years, the streets of Babcock, Belden, and Fay have installed sidewalks on both sides of the street. Armitage has partial sidewalks, and recently, Comstock and Crockett have successfully submitted petitions for sidewalks as well. Not only have 15 homes on Gladys Avenue spoken, the entire Garden community has spoken, as 7 out of the 8 streets either have sidewalks or have submitted petitions for sidewalks. We are not the minority, but rather part of the majority in our community striving for growth and safety. Some people are trying to say that this sidewalk issue is pitting old homes versus new homes. 27% of the homes that are in favor of sidewalks on Gladys are existing homes. On Babcock, new construction consists of only 25% of the block. Belden, it is only 34%. Clearly, there are many older homes and long-term residents that are in favor of sidewalks in the Garden community. The residents of Gladys are not asking for a nuclear power plant to be put on our street. We are asking for a sidewalk, something that is clearly valued in the city of Elmhurst, as 90% of the streets currently have them, and because a policy was created by the city council to allow residents to have them installed in their communities. Sidewalks and public safety are so valued by one alderman that he is using it as part of his platform to run for state representative. Alderman Nybo, you should be commended for this very public support of pedestrian safety. That picture of you on your website walking safely down a sidewalk with your family, that is exactly what we want. Leaders have an obligation to do what is in the best interest of the city and the people they represent. Leaders should not vote by emotion or for personal gain, but rather for what is best for the community and the residents in the long run. Tonight, as the elected leaders of Elmhurst, you have a choice. You can choose to support the residents that have successfully and respectfully followed policy. You can choose to support public safety and community and city growth. You can choose to support the natural progression of a community that has been happening all around us for years, or you can choose to keep Gladys Avenue static and resistant to change. I ask the City Council to be true leaders. Vote for what is in the best interest of the community, not for the minority who want to hold us back. Please vote yes to the revised sidewalk proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Miss. Anyone else regarding sidewalks on the pro side that would like to speak? Anybody? Anybody? Last call. Any other issues that would like to be spoken for public forum? This gentleman here in the front, in the yellow.
Michael Crumry, 570 West Crockett, which is 1 block away from Gladys. So my question is concerning basically what was spoken here today, and there was a proposal for sidewalks to be put into Crockett in 2006, and it was voted down. And then it was reintroduced just this past year due to what I will phrase a loophole, which allows for only one side of the street to be put into a sidewalk to be put on one side of the street. I would say to the committee here that that is that is what has gotten us to where we're at today. And I would strongly encourage that the rule of putting in sidewalks truly be voted upon both sides of the street. Because what is happening here is you have neighbors against neighbors. And you've seen this for the past, I believe someone said it's been going on for 22 months now. So as a citizen of Crockett, I fear that you're going to have this same scenario in a few months with Crockett if the situation persists with having only one side of the street with a sidewalk. Another question I would ask is, if only one side of the street is going to have a sidewalk, is it only the people that live on that street, on that side, use the sidewalk? Or the other people that are on the other side aren't going to use it? I highly doubt that. Other challenges are regrading driveways, where it's my understanding that the financial burden to regrade your driveway from the sidewalk up into your garage is the burden of the homeowner. That obviously seems unfair to the homeowner if that person is one that has voted against. But again, in my summary is just the loophole of having only one side of the street be allowed to be a sidewalk. I'm concerned as a citizen of Elmhurst that this occurrence will happen again and again on other streets as this proceeds. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Woman in the back there?
Hello, Mayor and Council. I'm Tamara Brenner, Tamara Brenner, 1M, 2 N's. I live at 137 North Caroline Avenue here in Elmhurst. I have some questions concerning the report coming out of the Finance and Council Affairs Committee regarding the sales tax rebate incentive for Lucky Motors. There might be some really good reasons for why the report is the way it is, but since those reasons aren't apparent to me as an interested observer, I have some questions about it. I know the city has agreed to sales tax rebate incentives in the past, and all but one of those have been for car dealerships, which Lucky Motors is. However, all of those past incentives applied to incremental sales and not to total sales of those dealerships. This implies that the dealerships receiving rebates in the past have had prior sales relationships with the city in that they had baseline sales producing sales tax revenue. Now, Lucky Motors does not have such a history in Elmhurst. They're just coming into the city right now. And their rebate incentive deal is currently structured to start at dollar number $1. It does not require any baseline sales. And even though the rebate has an annual cap on it, it effectively provides a rebate for total sales up to $10 million of local sales, assuming a 1% sales tax collection. And that's questionable if Lucky Motors actually falls under that 1% collection category. In addition, Lucky Motors has only been in business for 3 years at its original location in Addison, so it's got a pretty short track record. We've got a couple years of total sales data they've told us, but there's no projected sales data, except for them saying that they think Elmhurst sales in the first year should equal Addison sales last year, and I'm not sure if that claim has been validated as being possible or not. Lucky Motors is not a traditional car dealership. They're an internet-based business. They make a lot of sales out of the local area, and those sales don't provide sales tax revenue. That seems to be proven by the fact that they brought in $120,000 worth of sales tax to Addison during a year where they had $25 million of annual sales, which is less than 0.5% instead of 1% sales tax collections. The initial letter from Lucky Motors to the City of Elmhurst on December 31st, 2009 said that they'd already purchased their building on Church Road and that they intended to do interior remodeling and external improvements like lighting and landscaping to the tune of $50,000 to $100,000. And they said the sales tax rebate was going to be used for advertising to bring in more sales and customers to the website. Now, in subsequent committee meetings in the Finance and Council Affairs Committee, they talked about a 5-year plan. This was not mentioned in the initial letter at all. And this 5-year plan is supposed to include expanding the building, adding a service department, adding a parking lot, air conditioning showroom, et cetera, and the total cost is now $600,000. And that's what it seems to be the justification for a potential total rebate of $500,000 over a 10-year period. How did that change come about?
Emma, if you could wrap it up, I'll give you another 10 more seconds.
I think the bottom line is that the rebate as it's structured from the committee report should be changed. The structure should be changed, especially not to include a rebate starting at the first dollar of sales. I think you're going against your prior precedent of incremental sales.
You're well over your time.
And you're going to create a precedent that's going to become problematic in the future.
Okay. Have a nice night tonight. Sit down, relax. There we go. Ms. Heslop, in the back.
My name is Darlene Heslop, and I live at 200 North Michigan Avenue, number 227 in Elmhurst, Illinois. Something that bothered me tonight, and I'm really sorry to say this, but I think that it was a little inappropriate to single out a gentleman who's a senior citizen here in town as to his prior behavior. I've been there, done that, and it's not appropriate to say it in public. If you have a problem with the way somebody behaves, you can always tap them on the shoulder and say, you know, please be on your best behavior. So it was inappropriate, Mayor. I'm sorry, but it was inappropriate, and I had to say something. Anyway, I'll get to my end of the speech. Transparency has at its core trust and truth. It appears that the mayor may not have any trust in 14 aldermen to come to a favorable conclusion. He went and negotiated a contract with a lobbyist without the knowledge or the consent of the council. The memo which accompanied a poorly written contract stated that Mayor DeCiani met with numerous firms. However, it is highly questionable as to if this is indeed what transpired. The information subsequently obtained also gives rise to many questions concerning the mayor's motivation. Transparency is about respect for and protection of the process. The Gladys Avenue residents are here because they have involved themselves in every aspect of the process, despite at times frustration with its shortcomings. Processes exist for many reasons. Therefore, by attempting to circumvent, to bypass, or to deal behind closed doors shows a lack of respect for the members of this council, as well as it undermines their very credibility. The expectation of this community is protection of the process by all of our elected officials. It is disappointing when this is not done. It is time for the City Council to strengthen the statutes in order to prevent having business conducted by a wink and a handshake. This may be how things are done elsewhere, but not here in Elmhurst. Transparency is about making certain that enough information exists to make decisions that have the potential to set precedents. The Gladys Avenue SSA has changed dramatically from what it was originally put forth to residents. Its financial impact on the city finances as a whole alone are worthy of reconsideration of the entire project, not to mention the other issues brought to the attention of the committee. On the other hand, the information provided for the Lucky Motors rebate incentive seems to be lacking in completeness, as well as it appears that a precedent may prove to be difficult to continue to uphold. A 50-50 penny-for-penny rebate from $0 for the next 10 years, amounting to $500,000 in order to assist with financing renovations. All this for a company in business for less than 3 years, to which little financial data was made available. Will we now offer the same thing to our existing dealerships when they want to remodel or risk losing their business? There's nothing wrong with seeking additional information as well as redesigning a different incentive, perhaps one that is performance-based like the others that have been done before. I am not against financial assistance.
Ask you to wrap it up, that would be great. 10
I
seconds.
have one last sentence. I am not against giving financial assistance to businesses or to new development. However, let's avoid creating a situation where the potential exists for unrealistic future expectations. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Heslop. Anyone else for public forum at this time? Anybody? Last call? Hearing none, I will now go on to the next portion of our meeting, which is item number 5, our consent agenda. I would ask if there is anyone that would like to vote no, possibly have a question on any of the particular items on the consent agenda, to please let me know what items they might want to hold back on. If you're looking to give credit or say a comment regarding a plus on an item, I would ask that we do that under other business so that we can move this meeting along. At this time, anybody would like to remove any item from the consent agenda? Alderman Gutenkopf?
Item A.
Item A, okay. Anybody else? Okay. And at this time, I'd ask for a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda in its entirety, less item A. Motion and a second. Alderman Morley, Alderman York, and I'd ask Clerk Spencer to call the roll, please.
Morley.
Aye.
York.
Aye.
Gutenkopf.
Aye.
Pezza.
Aye.
Shea.
Aye.
Leader.
Aye.
Rose.
Aye.
Graham.
Aye.
Hipskin.
Aye.
Nybo.
Aye.
Healy.
Aye.
Kennedy.
Aye.
Mulliner, absent. Wagner.
Aye.
13 ayes, 0 nays, 1 absent.
13 ayes, 0 nays, 1 absent. The motion carries to approve the consent agenda, less item A. And at this time, I'd ask Clerk Spencer, actually, this is basically item A. If you'd like to just read this is the minutes, basically, from the regular meeting on May 17th. I'd ask for a motion in a second to put the minutes on the floor, please. Alderman Gutenkopf with a motion, second by Alderman York, and discussion. Alderman Gutenkopf?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. On page 13, under the discussion for all CERO public affairs and consulting services, I'm not quite sure those quite reflect the actual discussion, and I would like to recommend that we table these minutes until the next city council meeting so I can review the tape and confer with the city clerk about what we discussed.
Okay.
That's a motion.
It's a motion, okay. We have a motion. We have a second.
Oh.
A second by Alderman Rose, okay. And discussion, basically we're asking for a motion to table to clarify minutes on the tape. Anybody have a question or issue on that? All righty. We can do that by voice vote. All in favor, I would ask state by saying aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Minutes will be tabled, and we'll have those reviewed.
Right.
Next on the agenda are committee reports, which is item 6A, and that is a report. I'd ask Clerk Spencer to read the report, please.
It is therefore the recommendation of the Finance, Council Affairs, and Administrative Services Committee that the City Council direct the City Attorney to prepare a sales tax incentive agreement between the City of Elmhurst and Lucky Motors as outlined in this report. Respectfully submitted, Finance, Council Affairs, and Administrative Services Committee, signed by Stephen W. Hipskin, Chairman, Kevin L. York, Vice Chairman, unsigned by Mark A. Mulliner, and signed by Diane Gutenkopf.
And at this time, I'd ask for a motion and a second to put this report on the floor. Alderman Hipskin, Chairman, and Alderman York with a second, and discussion. Alderman Hipskin?
Actually, if anyone has any questions about the report, I'd be happy to answer them. I think it's pretty concise in what it is.
All right. Any questions or discussion on the report? Alderman Gutenkopf.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Questions have been raised about the structure of incentives that we've given to other businesses, and I asked the Finance Director, Marilyn Gaston, to put together a summary of economic incentive agreements that she's provided to me and I believe the other members of the Finance Committee. And as I look back, this goes back to 91, we've had a variety of mechanisms for granting these kinds of incentives, and some of them have been as high as, let me look at this top one, $3.4 million over 10 years. And when I looked at this, I really understand why people would want to make sure that we're granting the best possible incentive that we could, but I think it would be a miscategorization to say that this particular structure is outside the general realm of what we've done. And I'm comfortable with this because I think that we need to do everything we can to encourage new business to come into Elmhurst, and that anything that we can do to support something that has the potential to generate a strong return to help ease some of the financial burden that we're placing on homeowners through property tax increases is a positive thing for Elmhurst. And if that means that we balance that new revenue with a way for the business to develop a structure that they're moving into, or to promote themselves so that it increases the amount of sales they've got, I don't have a problem with that. And so I think that we really need to address some of these concerns and look at the overall way we give incentives. But I signed this report because I support what we've been doing as a committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman. Any other discussion or questions? Alderman Brown, I think you had a hand up.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. These are always tough. We have had a lot of car dealerships come to us in the past, as Alderman Gutenkopf has referenced, and one office equipment company as well in regards to some of these sales tax incentives. Most of which, and not all of which, but most of which have come to us, have been established Elmhurst businesses, and we're reinvesting in the community. I do understand about giving incentives to businesses to have them come here, to have them stay here, especially as in car dealerships. They are such a huge part of our sales tax revenue. And the more sales tax revenue we have, the less we have to worry about increasing the property tax rate, which is a good thing for all of Elmhurst residents. The problem I have, has already been alluded to by one of the residents, is that this is a new business, has not been proven here in Elmhurst. It has a dealership in Addison. I happen to be able to attend this committee meeting because I am in a different committee, and I actually asked the owners in regards to the incentive, in regards to haven't they already started making the updates to the business itself, and they stated they have. They are here in Elmhurst today. They're here. They've already invested monies to update the facility so they can do business here. There's a reason why they're here. They like the city, I hope, is part of that reason. Maybe location is another piece of that puzzle. My issues here is, these policy decisions are very critical because when we make these policy decisions, pretty much giving some sales tax back to the business, that leaves a hole in what we need to generate for our day-to-day activities, our operating costs. And as you can tell from many discussions, we have that issue today, partially because of the economy. But I think that the piece of that puzzle is some of these policy decisions. Is it a necessity to give this business any sales tax incentive today? I actually are a suspect of that. What I would actually like to recommend, and it was suggested by the resident who spoke, but before I do so, there are some inconsistencies of the meeting minutes in the current report. The meeting minutes of, and I don't have the date, February 8th of 2010 actually states that the build-out costs over a 5-year plan would be $500,000. The committee report says that all of a sudden it went up $100,000 and it's $600,000 for that same build-out. I have heard discussions from fellow aldermen that the sales tax rebate would be used for marketing and not for any of these build-out costs, which in 2010 have already started to occur. That is nowhere reflected in the meeting minutes or the report. If that is a true statement, and I don't know because it is not documented anywhere, and I wasn't at all of the committee meetings that spoke about this topic, but if that is a true topic, We are setting a precedence that we are rebating sales tax monies for marketing. We haven't done that before. We have done it for build-outs. We have done it for redoing a facility, but we haven't done it for marketing. So I am concerned about that. But in the spirit of compromise, I would like to make a motion to amend this report, and that motion is, for each year, the city will keep the first $100,000 sales tax received, and the excess over $100,000 base will be split 50-50. The reason why I picked the dollar amount of $100,000 is because the business owners, again, I'm referencing only the meeting minutes because that's all I have to go on, makes a statement of the projected annual retail sales for the Elmhurst location are $22 million in the first full year of operation, which the owners estimate would bring about $120,000 in sales tax to the city. So $100,000, and if they go above what they estimate to $120,000, then they would be able to reach that $50,000. I want this business owner to prove themselves, I shouldn't say this business owner, this business to be able to prove themselves before giving them the first dollar that comes in the till, comes in the register at this business. So I hope there is a second to my motion and that the full city council supports my motion.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, we do have a second by Alderman Shea to amend. Any discussion on the amendment? Alderman Leader?
I wasn't really going to speak on this. As usual, I'm prepared. The whole purpose of growth and development is to create new sources of revenue which will take the burden off the existing taxpayer base. To the extent that we create these new revenues, of course, we do not have to raise the tax levy again, which nobody wants to do. Now, Elmhurst is very, very dependent on retail tax sales, and the most important being automobile tax sales. Now, these are the key points for me. The retail sales tax revenue will accrue to Elmhurst on any sales made in the state of Illinois. If Lucky Motors does not perform, then it will cost the city of Elmhurst nothing. If Lucky Motors does perform, then the city will gain much needed revenues it would not otherwise have had. Now, Elmhurst, as has been pointed out, has a history, like every municipality, any place, of giving incentives. Now, in our case, we have a history of giving incentives to auto dealerships. Now, it's very important to further a pro-business attitude that will encourage people to come into our town with businesses that will create new retail sales taxes. We want them here. We don't want to raise the tax levy anymore. We don't want to raise fees. We don't want to even raise taxes, period. But the only way we can avoid doing that is to bring into town people who will create business that will create retail tax sales. Now, Lucky Motors can do that. Now, I understand they're already here, as opposed to saying, please come here, we'll give you an incentive. They're here. Now, we can say, I got you. We can certainly say that. We can even split hairs indefinitely till we reach a point of almost incomprehensibility. But in the end, what will we do? We will send a message to business, don't come here. We don't really want you. It is very important to send the right message to retail sales tax creating businesses. And if we don't, we are going to hurt our own taxpayer base. Now, in worst case here, worst case, we're not going to get anything out of them. That's the worst case. But Lucky Motors has already bought a building here, and they're paying heavy property taxes. Those taxes alone that Lucky Motors is paying will take the sunburn off the existing taxpayer base. As a local taxpayer, Lucky Motors, and potential large retail tax producer, I believe they deserve some consideration here, given that we cannot lose, only gain. Now, all city councils can set their own precedents. This one can change whatever precedents we've done in the past, and the next one is going to change whatever we've done. And finally, what are they doing there? They're selling a number of brands that are not presently being sold in Elmhurst. And their inventory, and you can just go on the internet, is composed of luxury used cars as opposed to new cars. They will not be in direct competition with our existing new car dealers. But even if they were, competition is good. That's what our economic system is. We're not a socialist country, we're a capitalist country. And we welcome competition because competition brings down prices. It's good for us and it's good for our taxpayers. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thanks, Mr. Leader. Alderman Leader. I will go to Alderman Shea and then Alderman Bragg.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor. We're all for incentives. We do want to attract new businesses, like I said, but Lucky Motors is already here, and according to the report, it doesn't say anything about that this money is for marketing. It says it's for the renovations, for $600,000 of renovations. The tax rebate would be $500,000, so we'll be paying like 80% of the renovations for their place. That's not incentive for bringing in new business, things like that. I don't believe in giving the store away either. If we're going to give them incentives, we should do it after a certain dollar amount, like have after this much, then we can split after that. Thank you.
All righty, Alderman Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to, I guess, refer back to the committee report a little bit more because I think what is stated here and what is summarized here is striking and reinforces my motion, my amendment. The owners explain that the improvements are necessary to make it into a showroom facility, and they plan to spend $100,000 in 2010, et cetera, et cetera. I won't go on there. Their estimated cost of the 5-year plan is $500,000, which is, as I stated earlier, different than the report has stated. They are asking the city for a 50% sales tax rebate to be paid over 10 years with a maximum rebate of $50,000 and a total rebate of $500,000. Much discussion ensued. Here's the critical piece. The owner said that they would continue to have an Addison location, but that Elmhurst was a better location. So obviously they chose this location for a reason. They indicated that they were not receiving any assistance from Addison. So we are already going above and beyond where they're at in a neighboring village. They do not receive any assistance from Addison. So here we are, and the other point that I want to make is we are, and my amendment does not negate the incentive. It just puts a little bit tighter controls on the incentive that they have to bring in that revenue, and Elmhurst sees the first $100,000. But the other piece of that pie is that we as a council, I believe it was a conditional use. We granted a conditional use for this business to be in the industrial park facility. So we have already encouraged them. We already hung that carrot out there and said, we want you here in Elmhurst. I don't believe in, as I think Alderman Shea has already alluded to, I don't also believe in giving away the store. We encouraged them by giving them the conditional use. We want you here. We are just putting on tighter controls that Elmhurst residents first see the first $100,000 before we do any splitting of sales tax revenue after that fact. Thank you.
Thanks, Alderman Brown. Alderman Peasant. I'll go to Alderman Nabel.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to start just by saying, had I been an alderman 5 years ago and this were before me when times were booming, I would have said, oh my gosh, absolutely no way, we're out of our minds. Unfortunately, times are not booming, and we do need revenue, and we do appreciate new business. That being said, I believe we all have to look at this in a little bit different fashion. And first and foremost, if this goes through, I would absolutely hope this would not be setting any precedent. To me, we have to take everything in these economic times in this climate on a case-by-case basis, examine it for what it is and how it can help the taxpayers. That being said, I have a few questions just for clarification for City Attorney Storino.
Sure.
And the first one is, if this were to go forward, will it require the writing of an ordinance to coordinate with it?
It will, and an agreement.
Okay.
An incentive agreement with an ordinance to accompany it.
Okay, so since we do need an ordinance, I guess I would like to be sure that as a part of that ordinance, to make this a win-win-win for everybody involved, what I'm getting out of this report is kind of a mesh between a facade incentive program and a tax rebate, which we already offer to these other businesses. And I think we need some clarity in our ordinance, because it says this is based upon the consideration that they are going to put $600,000 in improvements into this property. So to me, that's where it's being treated as a facade program, which now we do the 50-50. This is obviously more, but once again, it's a unique circumstance. So my question regarding that portion is, I know on a facade program, the building owner, when they make those improvements, has to supply their receipt in order to get the reimbursement. Will that be a part of the ordinance? So let's say their total facade improvement, they get a great deal, they do less than they think they have to, it's only $250, $300. Will that be treated on a scale basis in comparison to what this report says, according to the ordinance?
It wouldn't unless the council directed that that be placed in the agreement.
Okay, so the way it would be written, unless we change it tonight,
You would have to direct that you would want such a provision in the agreement, and we could include that. I might add there are probably some other things that weren't covered specifically in the report, because the report couldn't cover everything, but it would include what I call a dark provision, whereby if they left within a certain period of time while they were here, that they would have to reimburse that money to the city. So there are a series of provisions that I'm going to put in the ordinance that aren't in the committee report, just that would be, I would like to think, further beneficial to the city.
so would we have to vote on including that this evening, or is that something you do to all?
I wouldn't have put that provision that you just mentioned into this ordinance. So if that's something that the council wants to specifically see receipts up to and including a certain amount of money, should probably direct me to do that, and I'll do it.
Okay. I mean, I think it would only be fair, considering, to me, that's what we do with every other business. So why would we just give an incentive based on what somebody tells us? I think we owe it to ourselves to be in receipt of any improvements, if that's the agreement. So do I need to make a motion to have that included in the ordinance?
Just consulting with the city manager, and he is indicating, and as you've appropriately said, that it says $600,000. I think probably what you should do is deal with the first amendment that Alderman Braham presented, and then we could put in other provisions that you know, amend again, put in other provisions you might think appropriate. I guess I'm kind of anxious to see if we're going to approve that amendment first.
Well, that's kind of what I'm basing my decision on, is if we can
You're looking
make sure
at
we're covered that way.
Covering at least $600,000 of expenditures on the part of the Lucky Motors.
Correct.
I understand.
Okay. Alderman Nabo?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My predecessor in this seat for the 5th Ward was Alderman Phil Jordan. And Phil was a very quiet person when he served up here on the dais. And when I was a young person, I used to say, why is Phil so quiet? Alderman Jordan is so quiet. Why doesn't he speak up and talk more? And the longer that I've served on this dais, the more it's occurred to me how wise Phil Jordan was, because sometimes the best service that we can give to our constituents is just to sit here and listen, and no matter what the issue is, but listen to the public and people who come and talk to us, and listen to each other. And so I've always made a conscious effort to try to listen more while I'm up here. Particularly tonight, I'm listening on a variety of issues tonight. But as I'm listening to Alderman Bram and trying to ferret out whether there's much of a difference between what he's proposing and what the committee report has proposed, listening to the conversation, one might think that there's not much of a difference, that it's merely a matter of timing or setting benchmarks as to when incentives kick in. But listening and studying the report, I think there's a very significant difference in what Alderman Bram's suggesting than what the committee is suggesting. And I may be reading the report incorrectly, and so I'll defer to the city manager. I'll phrase this as a question, an observation, and then I'll say, am I right? But as I read this, there's a maximum total payment of $500,000 over a 10-year period. They can get that $50,000 in various increments, capped at up to $50,000 per year. So let's assume that they do get a rebate of $50,000 each year. Now they're projected to have total sales tax revenue of $120,000 each year. So if we put a requirement that they don't get the rebate on the first $100,000, as Alderman Bram has suggested, then by their own projections, the most amount of sales tax revenue that they'd be rebate eligible for would be that $20,000 beyond the first $100,000. And if we have a 10-year duration on this, the most amount of revenue by their own projections that they'd be rebate eligible for would be $200,000. So basically, if we, as I see it, if we adopt Alderman Bram's suggestion, we're not capping this at $500,000. By their projections, we're really capping it at $200,000. I mean, the practical consequences of that could be quite significant. Unless I'm misunderstanding it, this is the point at which I'll say, am I reading this correctly, City Manager? Is my analysis correct?
Relative to the committee report, I believe you are. I'm not sure that you're interpreting Alderman Bram's proposed amendment correctly.
But based on their projections of $120,000 per year, $120,000 per year,
yeah,
we required them to not be rebate eligible for the first $100,000 that they generate. By their projections, they would only be rebate eligible for about $200,000 of total sales tax over the next 10 years.
With the max, you're correct, $20,000 a year.
I mean, that is significant. I mean, I think we have to accept that their projections are what they are. I mean, unless we have a reason to doubt that those are the correct projections. But if we look at it in that sense, I think that's quite significant. We're taking a $500,000, what's projected to be, anticipated to be a $500,000 rebate incentive, and essentially structuring it, if we adopt his amendment, so that it's only $200,000 rebate incentive.
This will fail.
And if I'm incorrect about that, please let me know, because again, I'm willing to listen to any of you.
I think you're a good listener, Mr. Nabel, Alderman Nabel. Alderman Morley, you got a hand?
Yeah, I'd just like a point of clarification from the clerk. Could she read back what the amendment is? Because I think Alderman Nabel has it right, but...
Do you have it written?
I wrote it if you would like it.
I would
It's
like
at the
it.
bottom. It mimics some of our previous incentives.
And to me, to begin with. He would like to amend the motion to read each, is that where it starts? Each year, the city will keep the first $100,000 sales tax received, and the excess over $100,000 base will be split 50-50.
That's in addition to the current restraint.
Yeah, that would actually only be $10,000
Yes.
times 10 years, so about $100,000 based on
50%.
50% rebate, so.
So it's 100,000 rebate?
It's only
I'm
100,000.
sorry, I'm out of order.
Yeah, it's okay, no, it's, I just wanted to add that, so we're really capping it at 100,000, because the rebate split 50-50. The city gets 50 cents on the dollar over, right, you know.
Over 100.
Over 100,000 with Alderman Brown's amendment, they get 50 cents on the dollar day one with the city report the way it's written out of.
May I do a quick follow-up?
Absolutely, Alderman Nabel.
You know, there's going to be two stories that come out of tonight's meeting, and this is where, you know, what's going on with Navistar. I thought it was important that we all follow what's going on with Navistar, because the story coming out of tonight's meeting is going to be what happens on Gladys Avenue, and potentially that the city of Elmhurst initially offered $500,000 in a sales tax incentive to a car dealership, and then cut it down to $100,000. Which, from a media perspective, is quite significant, and I don't want to be attached to that in no part.
I understand. Alderman Morley, did you want to finish up, or were you okay with your question? I apologize.
As long as what I've heard is correct, which is that it's 50% over the first 100,000, which in the projection that Lucky Motors has provided, in this case, they would get a $10,000 rebate based on their projection per year. Just one clarification. If that's the case, that's the case.
Thanks, Alderman. Anybody else? Alderman Rose?
Yeah, I have to admit I'm a little puzzled about this in particular. I actually have been reading the business section of the paper for some amount of time, and I have to tell you, the notion that we have a car dealer who wants to come here, who has come here, and that somehow businesses are flocking here, I have to tell you, it's my perception that I think that's erroneous. No business is flocking anywhere, to be honest with you. The fact that we have a car dealer of high end who wants to come here, I think, is a wonderful thing. They are here already. I think that that is true. However, I thought Alderman Brand made a really good point, which is they had said they were receiving nothing in Addison. They're no longer in Addison. They've decided to come to Elmhurst. We're not the only place. Is that true? I thought that's what. They're opening up a second, but they're receiving nothing in Addison, excuse me. But they are in Elmhurst. I have to tell you that car dealers like to flock around each other. That's what they do. Why do you think Grand Avenue is as big as it is? We've got a lot of car dealers there. They want to be with each other. It's, as Alderman Leader says, fosters competition. However, this is not the only automobile row in DuPage County. There's several other places to the south of here. A high-end car dealer, internet-based, would be really happy to go there. I just think it is a flawed perception to say if we don't give them, if we give them nothing, or we are really reduce that to 20% of what the committee actually seems to think is appropriate, to go from $500,000 to $100,000. I got to tell you, if I'm in Western Springs, if I'm in Hinsdale, if I'm in Oak Brook, I'm calling these guys up tomorrow and saying, hey, why don't you come down here and look here? So there was a myth when I was a kid. There was a story called about the guy who killed the goose that laid the golden egg because he wanted more and more and more. And I got to tell you, I have grave concerns in these times for us to turn away a car dealership, in essence. And you could say, Alderman Bram could say, oh, we're not turning them away. We're just not giving them as much. I think, in essence, we're turning them away. And I do not want to be an alderman who sits up here and says to a high-end car dealership, see, please, go somewhere else. Things are fine here in Elmhurst. And then next year, I got to say to everybody here, you know, we just don't have that tax money we thought we had, so maybe we got to raise the levy again. We cannot keep going to the well to property owners when we have businesses, successful businesses that want to be here. It's part of our tradition. When things were going well, and I think Alderman Pezin makes a good point, 5 years ago, it might have been a harder argument to say that, but the truth is we were still doing that for several reasons, because Villa Park wanted them, everybody kind of, and we've lost car dealerships, I will tell you, to Villa Park. The last thing I want to say, which is around verification of sales tax, my understanding is that that's pretty much state data. We would get that data. I don't know that we would need particular ones, but that data really is going to be official, and we would get that at that time. I don't think there's any other way around that. So I strongly support this, and I urge anyone who wants to see a lower property tax bill, which I would love to for myself, to support this.
Alderman Gutenkopf, and then I'll go to Alderman Bram, and hopefully we'll wrap it up. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to play off of the final point that Alderman Rose made, not only does the state verify the data, the state collects the sales tax, gives it to us, and we then rebate it to the business owner. So the business owner is removed from that equation. The state collects the sales tax. So there isn't any, I'm not sure I understood Alderman Peza's sort of receipt analogy, because we're not granting them a facade grant. This is strictly a sales tax rebate. And then as I look back over the way most of these have been structured in the past, there's sort of an either-or provision. And I'm hoping that the city attorney will include the similar provision. It tends to read, with minor modifications, we will grant you this rebate until either a time certain or a dollar threshold is met, whichever comes first. And I'm assuming that that's what we're going to do now. So if they generate so much sales that they hit that $500,000 in the first 4 years, yay! And everything after that we get to keep. And if they go for the full 10 years and don't hit that threshold of $500,000, then, gosh, I'm really sorry, but they won't get the full $500,000. And when I look back at the records of what's happened, for example, Wolf Motors, we granted them in '96 a potential rebate of $750,000. We were going to split all their sales tax 50-50 until they'd hit either $750,000 or 8 years had elapsed. Well, 8 years passed and they only got $414,000. So unfortunately for them, they weren't generating the sales they thought, so fortunately for us, we didn't rebate to them the total amount that they looked for. On the other hand, we offered an incentive, I've just lost it, to North Avenue Honda that was $325,000. Over a 3-year period, they were going to get 50-50 over the first year, and then after that, we would keep a base amount, and they'd get the amount over that. They completed that incentive. We received $325,000 in sales tax revenue, and that happened within the first 3 years, and this was a 6-year agreement. So, that worked out very well for Elmhurst, and I'm assuming it worked out very well for North Avenue Honda at the time. This was in '98. So there have been a lot of different structures for these incentives, and I really don't. The only downside I can see is that maybe we won't get as much as we would get if we didn't give them a rebate. But we're not getting anything now, and everything we get above that is a bonus. And if we can encourage this business to be very successful, we'll see even more than $50,000 a year. Thank you.
Very well spoken, Alderman Gutenkopf. Before I go to Alderman Brown, I just want to ask City Manager, what business was in that building prior to Lucky Motors' desire and interest? Was that a vacant building, or what was in that again?
I'm not sure what was there, but it wasn't a sales tax producing business.
I understand it was vacant.
Well, it was vacant for a period of time.
Okay.
3 years. It was vacant for a period of time, and before that it was a die cast, which they actually had some environmental problems that they cleaned up.
Gotcha. Thank you. Okay. So we had a empty building, bringing in no revenue. Now we'll have a viable business with a 50-50 split, just to get the facts straight, so everybody kind of understands what we're doing here. So, Alderman Brown, you want to wrap it up?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I actually have a question either for the city treasurer or for the city manager. In regards to the revenue generated, they were approximating $22 million generated. What percentage of that would the city of Elmhurst see? Isn't it 1%?
Lucky Motors, not all of the sales tax they collect would be returned to the city of Elmhurst, in that many of their sales are on vehicles that are delivered out of state. And in those cases, the sales tax follows the purchase to the out-of-state location. So they projected about half of the 22 million, or about 11 million, would be sales that would generate a state of Illinois sales tax. 1% is the state of Illinois sales tax that comes back to the city of Elmhurst. About 12 million would be Illinois taxed, so 120,000 would come to the city of Elmhurst.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. I saw the total revenue, or approximate total revenue of 22 million, and saw the 120,000, was questioning that. So in summary, at least from my perspective, is that I think that the city of Elmhurst has awarded this business and wants this business in town. We granted the conditional use. All I'm asking for is that we set the goals high for a business. We're giving them something compared to nothing. They went to Edison for nothing. They came to Elmhurst and they're asking for something. We're potentially giving them two things: the conditional use to be in that building, and then secondary, some type of additional revenue source. Now, if it's 500,000, 100, or 250,000, it is more than they're getting in Addison, and it is more than that has been offered elsewhere. Thank you.
All righty. I think we've heard both sides of this discussion, and at this time, I ask Clerk Spencer to call the roll, please, on the amendment.
Graham.
Aye.
Shea.
Aye.
Gutenkopf.
No.
Pezza.
No.
Leader.
No.
Rose.
No.
Hipskin.
No.
York.
No.
Nybo.
No.
Healy.
No.
Morley.
No.
Kennedy.
No.
Mulliner absent. Wagner.
No.
Right. 2 ayes, 11 nays, and 1 absent.
Excuse me, 2 ayes, 11 nays, 1 absent. That motion to amend fails. Now back to the initial motion. Any other discussion? Alderman Pezza?
Yes, would this be an okay time to address Mr. Storino and make my motion with the...
I don't know if it's necessary, because this is not a facade.
Well, I think there was a misunderstanding as to my point, so if I could clarify?
If you'd like to clarify, absolutely.
Okay.
Sure.
I look at the report, and I'm basing my vote on this report. In the report, if you go to the second sentence in the first paragraph, it says, to review a request from Lucky Motors for a sales tax rebate incentive to assist in financing improvements to convert a warehouse facility to a high-end used car facility. You go down to the third paragraph, third sentence. Lucky Motors' 5-year plan includes expanding the building and adding a service department with a new parking lot, fully air-conditioned showroom. The cost of all renovations is projected to exceed $600,000. To assist with financing the investment, Lucky Motors is requesting a sales tax rebate incentive agreement with the following parameters. So I view this as I'm basing my vote on their rebate with the fact that they want the money, much like our facade program operates, to cover their $600,000. It's exactly what they're saying they want it for, to assist with the $600,000 in improvements. Therefore, I'm all for this. I think it's wonderful they're coming. However, it's only fair to the city and the taxpayers that we get receipt of those improvements, not their taxes, not the taxes, the receipt of the improvements, so that we can assure ourselves that they're meeting their end of the deal. That's my point. It wasn't for the tax, it was for the expenditures, so that they are spending the money and investing the money in our community and in our properties in Elmhurst. I think it's only fair that that be built into the contract. That was my point.
Okay. And I'm wondering if maybe we should see that, when the ordinance is written, maybe if it's not in there, or if it's not the way to your liking, this is a work in progress, and they will tighten this up. I'm wondering at that point if you want to make a motion to amend.
I would go by
City
Mr.
Attorney
Storino's-
Storino, what do you think?
I completely understand the provision. It would just be another milestone for Lucky Motors to hit. They just have to show these receipts to an amount at least $500,000, to exceed $500,000. So it's an easy provision to provide in the agreement. I don't think Lucky Motors is pushing back on that issue. I'm not speaking for them, but I don't think they are, because they have in fact said at the meetings that I've been at that they would be in fact spending that amount of money in renovations. So simply to hold them to that, I think we can put that in the agreement, unless the council doesn't want to do it. I don't have any problem putting that in there. I'm going to put a few other provisions, as I previously indicated, in there.
Chairman Hipskin, I'll speak real quick.
It is in the report, but if they want to spend it on advertising, if they want to spend it on other things, we have to broaden that out, because we don't run car dealerships. We don't know what expenses look like. We don't know what time looks like. We don't know what interest expenses look like. We just can't up on the dais say, oh, okay, this is all it's for. So if they want to spend it on advertising, that's okay with me too.
Very good.
So we have to broaden that out or not have it in. It's 50,000 a year, it's capped. It's capped at 500,000. Common sense will make them reinvest it back into their business. We don't know, we're not experts in the car dealership. We don't know what that right investment is, and to say it can only be used for infrastructure is coupling them. It's once again what Alderman Leader had spoke to. We're sending a bad message. We've sent bad messages in the past. You know what? It's $50,000 a year for 10 years. You know, I mean, there's so much more that has gone on to this. No one's brought up the fact that the luxury used car market has taken a complete 100% fundamental shift that was based in, I think, where was Luxury Motors? Franklin Park. $600 million a year business is now out of business. It's being taken over by businesses just like Lucky Motors. We have the potential to hit, if they hit a home run, we could have a $100 million a year business here. And you know what? I want to give them the most opportunity to achieve that $100 million a year. So I don't want to, the provision, I don't want to put a provision in because I don't know their business well enough to put the parameters around. This facade thing, like this is some facade, first time I've ever heard of it tonight, is that, oh, this is partially a facade. It's not partially a facade. It's just something we brought up tonight, and it's, you know, let the work be done in the committee. Everything cannot reflect in one report. I mean, it's frustrating. People want to come up and make a motion and change something that we've worked on for 6 months. I've never heard one word from any of these people about this. And it's frustrating, the fact that we have to work very hard and then, you know, put a motion up. Someone could have called me about this, but no, it's a motion, it's 40 minutes on something that we're at right now. It's probably longer than that. It shouldn't be. This isn't the way we do business.
Right. Thanks, Chairman.
I'm just frustrated.
It's okay. I understand, Chairman. Alderman Nybel?
I think Alderman Hipskin raises a very good point. I mean, we don't run car dealerships. And, you know, the objective of this is to get this business to come into Elmhurst. And part of the objective is to get other businesses to come into our community. You know, there's a good question. You know, if you're operating a business and you're getting a rebate, you know, what if there's 1 year where, you know, maybe we don't really need to do any facility improvements and, you know, the grounds look great, everything's fine, but you know what, we really need a couple more salespeople out there. You know, I mean, do we want to be the entity that's responsible for forcing them to put $50,000 into, you know, a roof that they may not need as opposed to hiring 2 new people? I just think it's better as a matter of policy to let the businesses operate as businesses and for us to get involved where it's part of our core responsibilities. You know, safety, public works, fire, economic incentives, development. So it's just, as a matter of policy, I don't want to get too involved in the operation of their business.
Good. Alderman Morley.
In the essence of time, I think it's pretty obvious that this is not something that we want to add into the ordinance when it comes before us. So my only request would be if we want to vote on this or talk about this, someone put a motion forward, let's vote it up or down and let's get on with this.
Okay. Would you like Alderman Pezza?
Yes, as I stated, I'm not sure then, I thought maybe Chairman Hipskin wrote this report which specifically states these facts, which is what I'm basing my vote on. So to say someone's making this up at the end of the day, this is fact, this is what we were told, the reasoning behind this report, this recommendation, it's in black and white, spelled out twice in the report. I'm here to protect the best interest of the taxpayer. I think we're giving a great deal. I think in exchange, we're getting a nice car dealership. Win-win for everybody. However, I would like to make a motion that Mr. Storino include in the ordinance that receipt, if they want to make it for marketing also, whatever it may be, I believe the taxpayers are owed, just as any other incentive program or reimbursement program shows, receipt for, maybe we could say, benefit to the dealership to promote sales, however he would choose to word it. I trust him, but we owe it to the taxpayers and ourselves to have proof of receipt so that both ends of the deal are being lived up to. In our ordinance, I think I'd like to make that motion.
Okay. Got a motion to make that amendment. motion fails for lack of a second. On to the original motion. Alderman Nabel?
Call the question.
Call the question. Alderman, oh,
Sorry, I just had one question.
sure, Alderman Healy.
Just on the initial report, there's a maximum payout of $500,000, an annual payment of $50,000. Is there a makeup, or is it possible for them to make up if they don't hit the 50 one year? Can they have a great year the second year and make it up? So it's a hard 50 per year, total of 500. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman. We're going to call a question on the floor. I'd ask Clerk Spencer to call the roll, please.
Pipskin.
Aye.
York.
Aye.
Gutenkopf.
Aye.
Pezza.
Aye.
Shea.
Aye.
Leader.
Aye.
Rose.
Aye.
Graham.
Aye.
Nybo.
Aye.
Healy.
Aye.
Morley.
Aye.
Kennedy.
Aye.
Mulliner absent. Wagner.
Aye.
13 ayes, 0 nays, 1 absent.
13 ayes, 0 nays, 1 absent. The report passes for Lucky Motors. I think in the future, if we can call the chairman of the committees with these types of issues so we don't spend as much time up here as we are doing. We are always trying to work in the good faith of the people, but we also don't want to waste the time of the good faith of the people as well, too. So, on to item B, report from Gladys. I'd ask Clerk Spencer to read the report, please.
It is therefore the recommendation of the Public Works and Buildings Committee that the current proposed sidewalk installation requiring a reduced Gladys Street width be halted, and that current SSA be canceled, and that the City Council authorize the attorney for the city to prepare the appropriate documents to initiate a new SSA to finance sidewalks for the eastern half of the north side of Gladys as reviewed above. Respectfully submitted, Public Works and Buildings Committee, signed by Jim Kennedy, Chairman, Pat Shea, unsigned by Michael Bram, Vice Chairman, and signed by Chris Healy.
And at this time, I ask for a motion and a second to put this report on the floor, please. Alderman Kennedy with a motion, second by Alderman Healy. And discussion, Chairman Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to defer to Alderman Leader for opening comments.
Thank you. If that's all right with you, Mr. Mayor. For Alderman Shea and myself, this is our ward, and this is a difficult issue, to say the least. It's hard to understand, at least for me, what the struggle on Gladys is really all about. You can see some, but not all of the forces that make this so disagreeable for all concerned. It is as if invisible and implacable forces have clashed. And in the process, they are tearing this block apart. Is it about safety? No one can predict the future, and no one knows it except maybe the good Lord. But history indicates it's not about safety. There has not been a child struck and injured by a car in living memory or recorded Elmhurst history on any of the 8 long, quiet, insulated blocks of the entire subdivision. Is it about sidewalks alone? I favor sidewalks when a clear majority of residents on both sides of the street want them. And I am against sidewalks when a clear majority of residents on both sides of the street does not want them. But this is not just about sidewalks. It is about sidewalks coupled with the narrowing of the street by 3 feet to the detriment of 39 out of 57 homeowners who live on Gladys. Now, I was not elected Alderman of the 2nd Ward as a pro or anti-sidewalk person. I was not elected with any agenda on sidewalks. I was elected to represent the clear-cut wishes of the majority. Is this about sidewalks being good for neighborhood property values? I don't know if they're good or not. I was elected to express rather than shape the thoughts of the people whom I am representing. The decision to be left to the whole block, speaking through the democratic process of majority rule. I believe government to be too intrusive. Let the local homeowners decide if sidewalks add or subtract from their property values. They know best. This I do know. The original deliberation and vote was based on a cost of $160,000. We now know that the actual cost to complete the project as originally proposed is $280,000. The original deliberation and vote did not consider narrowing the width of the street. We now know that the width of the street is to be narrowed by some 3 feet. The original deliberation and vote was based on standard width sidewalks and parkways. We now know the narrowed sidewalks will be only a foot or two from the curb. We knew none of these things when we originally voted. What we voted on no longer exists. It is most unwise and unfair, as well as fundamentally undemocratic, to pass a law which shall benefit 30% of the homeowners of a block to the harm of 70% of the homeowners of a block. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Alderman. Alderman Kennedy?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Looking at this situation, and we go back in history, the residents who wanted the sidewalk have done everything that's been asked of them in the process. They've followed it to a T. They've jumped over every hurdle. They've done exactly what's been asked of them. And it's very understandable how they'd be upset with the delay in this process and how long it's taken us to get to this point. However, and I'll mimic what Alderman Leader says, due to the change in scope, due to the fact that the sidewalks the revised plan is necessitating a need to narrow the street, we've changed the entire project, and it's something that I cannot support, and I would encourage others not to support either. It's non-beneficial to the people on the street. Narrowing the sidewalk, you could argue, is a safety benefit, is a safety detriment. The fact of the matter is, those folks on the south side of the street have not had an opportunity to weigh in with their opinion in this process. So, if we go back, we look at how was the original SSA approved. First and foremost, this group up here deliberated and the majority spoke, and that was what we were going forward with. Unfortunately, the process has changed with a more thorough analysis by the city staff and the Public Works Department. The original project for $160,000 cannot be delivered. We've had the city staff, we've had engineers look at it. There is no possible way to get a 5-foot sidewalk onto the north side of Gladys in any way with the current provision of $160,000. It can be done for $280,000. That's $120,000 that's not in our city budget, and if we went that route, we'd obviously have to create a new SSA, but we'd also have to figure out where to cut $120,000 from our operating budget to do it this year. So we could deliberate long and hard about taking more from the Historical Museum. We could not pave another street. We could not do a lot of things, but that's not an option, unfortunately. So we're back to the point of we have $160,000 to spend on a sidewalk. If we are to keep within the SSA, the project is we have to narrow the sidewalks. We have no other options again. So what are we looking at here from voting? If we vote yes, we're voting for a compromise, and that compromise is that we would put sidewalks on the north side of Gladys from the corner to, from 537 to 589 Gladys, inclusive of the corner. That would be our position here in terms of a compromise. If we vote no, we're doing exactly as Alderman Leader says. We're ignoring the 70%. We're ignoring the majority, and we're going with the minority. Albeit they followed the process, we're going with what the minority wants. And we're putting a sidewalk in where
most people do not want it to be. So, what I propose is exactly what's on the report, is that we dissolve the SSA, and as the report states, we ask the city attorney to create a new SSA that will allow for the creation of the sidewalks in that narrowed section along the north side and the east side of Gladys Avenue. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman. Alderman Shea.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have some questions, a couple questions that after speaking to the residents over the weekend that were concerns of theirs.
Yeah, talk.
Oh, I'm sorry. I had some I want to ask some questions that the residents had asked me over the weekend. So one is, if the report passes and a new SSA is drawn up, where are the sidewalks then going to be placed? They were concerned. It doesn't say, is it going to be then the original place, or would it still be 2 feet off the curb? That's just one of their questions.
Are you looking for city staff to answer that?
Right.
City Manager Borcher, would you like to have Mr. Hughes come up, or can you handle those questions?
I'll let him answer those that I can't answer. So this one I think I can answer, and that would be that with this compromise committee report, there would be then a direction from the council to the attorney to prepare an ordinance to turn around the existing special service area, but create the first of the ordinances that would implement a modified special service area. In the 60 days between that first ordinance on the creation of the revised SSA and the final ordinance, city engineering staff would work with that project and identify all of the engineering necessary. It is anticipated at this time that the sidewalk would be able to be placed, as the guidelines suggest, 1 foot off the right-of-way line and in a straight alignment with the cooperation of the private property owners in allowing for a regrading at the special service area construction cost expense, regrading partially of the front yards to that elevation to allow for the proper driveway slope from the curb and gutter across the sidewalk and into the house. So that would be the plan, and there would be, with that engineering completed, a meeting with the neighborhood, as there was a couple of meetings with the neighborhood as the plans evolved over the last couple of years with the current effort. So we would work within the 60 days to identify that, to answer that specifically. It's our estimate at this point that it would be a foot off the sidewalk. The sidewalk would be a foot off the right-of-way line.
And could the city make sure that they work very closely also with the residents, so they know exactly what's going to happen and when it's going to happen and things like that?
And there would be still a high possibility that with clear direction from the city council not to change the street work could proceed in July or August. The sidewalk work would need to be not started till after the second enabling ordinance is passed, which can be no sooner than 60 days after the first ordinance. Therefore, the sidewalk work would not be done at the same time the street work is. It would be the staff's plan with the council's direction to proceed, however, that the sidewalk could still be done in the fall of this year.
All right, thank you.
Okay, Alderman. For discussion. Alderman Brown.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As Alderman Rose can contest, sidewalks are near and dear to our hearts. As the previous mayor, Mr. Marcucci, would state, sidewalks hard. I mean, it's just as simple as that. I see both sides of this issue, and I know it's a difficult one, and it's caused some division amongst the neighbors. I guess my concern, and I just want to stipulate what my concern here is with this recommendation. I'm a little bit concerned on the validity of the recommendation of this report. What we voted on previously was just the ordinance for the SSA. Now, and I'd like to get a legal opinion from City Attorney Storino, now we're mudding up, per se, with what we're doing with and without sidewalks. I thought our responsibility was to vote the SSA up or down. That's what our policy has been. That's what we have done ever since we established this. And I just would like to get legal opinion if this recommendation of this report is valid.
City Attorney Storino?
Sure. I think, frankly, by implication, if you vote in favor of this report, I will then be directed to abolish the existing SSA, which would have to occur, and then, as the city manager said, we would take it to implement a new SSA based on what the report says. So I think it would be valid direction to me that I understand that there would have to be an ordinance to abolish the first SSA, the SSA that we previously established.
So if I can summarize what you just said, would be the only step out of this would be the proposed abolishment of the SSA. But there's other things in this recommendation. So that's my concern, the other items in this recommendation. Should this is it valid for this to consist of the 3 items in the recommendation, or is it valid only to state the potential abolishment of this SSA?
No, I think that, you know, in order of what has to occur, the first item that has to occur is an ordinance has to be passed to abolish the SSA, and I think the report clearly by implication says that has to be done, because we can't do the next SSA unless we do that.
Agreed.
So, and then I think there's plenty of direction to me on the basis of establishing the new SSA, which we would have to create the area of the SSA. We would have to, again, start that process to fulfill the state requirements to establish a new SSA if the report passes. So I guess in answer, I think there's enough direction for me to do that. I do.
Okay, so you're saying that the recommendation is valid?
Is valid.
Okay, to follow up to that then, I think that this recommendation goes against what our current sidewalk policy is in many instances. But the one instance I'm concerned about is saying that we're going to do sidewalk, I think it actually states it, sidewalk installation on half of the block. And I think not only that's against our policy that we've had, because one can argue that a policy is just that, it's just a policy, you can follow it, you don't have to follow it, it's not law. The other concern is the engineering nightmare that we potentially could be incurring by doing such a thing. We are going to engineer these sidewalks for half of the block, knowing that there's a problem up ahead on the other half of the block. But once the sidewalks are installed, that's it. You can't then, well, I guess you could, go back and narrow the street and take those additional measures. But the concern is, for me, twofold: the policy and the engineering nightmare. Unless you're going to have a steep ramp up on the sidewalks if the other half of the block ever so chooses to petition for sidewalks. But it will be an engineering nightmare to do so, just because you're currently only engineering for half a block. And you're leaving the other half of the block out of the equation altogether. So I think we're really backing the other half, if they ever so choose, of the block in a corner, because I don't know if there will then be an engineering solution to that. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Alderman Gutenkopf?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. While I'm extremely sympathetic to the plight of engineers in the future, I think that the residents of today are the ones that we should be the most concerned about. What I really appreciate about this report is that it offers us a compromise solution because of events that we didn't foresee initially, that in order to put in the sidewalk as initially proposed, we ran up against engineering issues and financial issues that we aren't ready to take on. And in order to narrow the street, to solve that problem, we run up against a democracy issue, that half the residents of the street haven't had an opportunity to be part of the discussion. So, like I said, I'm sympathetic to the potential for future engineering issues, but I have to have faith that future engineers will be able to solve that problem, and if the sidewalk ends up with a zigzag in it, it ends up with a zigzag in it. I don't know that that's really something that should derail a compromise that has the potential to start healing a neighborhood that is clearly torn apart over this issue. What I appreciate about this report is that it directs us to allow 15 people who are really, really vocal about how the sidewalks are going to improve their houses. They live in a cluster, and it allows us to put the sidewalks in that cluster. It brings them from the end, the middle house in the block, to the corner. It gives the children a safe path to school. It gives them a place to ride their bikes, and it protects property owners on the western half of this block from something that they don't want. I don't enter into decisions that go against our typical policy easily. I think it requires a strong deliberation and a strong motivation for why we would go against policy. And I think we've had the opportunity to really deliberate about this and to say, you know, there's a perfectly good reason for us to take our policy, to use it as a guideline, and to say it applies or it doesn't apply. And in this case, I think we've carefully considered why it might not apply. And to apply this compromise that provides sidewalks for a cluster of homes for whom it will benefit and for whom the engineering issues are much less burdensome, then let's go for it. I support this report, and I think this compromise is going to bring this block the best solution that we can envision right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman. Alderman Morley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a couple of legal questions, and then I would ask maybe a clarification from the chairman of the committee. I'm going to assume Mr. Storino. Can I direct these to Mr. Storino, my legal question?
It's fine.
I'm going to assume, Mr. Storino, that even though we did pass an SSN, even though we actually put it into an ordinance and passed it, we can legally do what's proposed in this.
Yes.
Okay, second question. I'm not certain of all the legalities of an SSA, but can this body here, without input from the citizens, create a secondary SSA, in this case, a shorter SSA, physically shorter? Can we create an SSA to cover the homes that Alderman Kennedy said would be in this proposal without a vote from the community, without a vote from those people on that block?
No.
So we would have to go back to square one on the SSA.
Yes.
And in this case, would we have to structure a new ordinance that would allow, like a street-specific ordinance that would allow the first 15 homes on Gladys to approach the city with an SSA? Is that how that would work?
Yes. And then the process proceeds through the blocking, objecting
through the normal
period, through the normal course, 60 days, and then the establishment ordinance comes at the end of that process.
Okay. Two more questions. One more for our parliamentarian. Does Rule of 8, does that apply on a report like this?
No.
Okay. So it's just simple majority at this case?
Yes.
Okay, then last question for, if I may, Chairman Kennedy. I'm not sure I heard the addresses correctly. If you go from the end, which would be, I guess, from West Avenue, and you include the first X amount of homes?
Yes.
Did you say, including the corner house that technically has a West Avenue address, the first house west of there, is that 537 all the way to 589?
Correct.
Okay, and do you know how many homes is that?
It's 14.
14.
14 in the corner, 15 total.
Okay, in terms of who voted on that close vote, I can't remember if it was 15 out of 28 or 15 out of 29, whatever it was. How many of those 14 homes were yes votes in that SSA?
All 14 homes on Gladys were yes. And the corner house, as the records have, did not respond.
The corner house that
on West
technically has a West?
Correct.
Where they were approached? So in this case,
It was yes. Records indicate that there was approached and there was no response.
so of the addresses you referenced, 537 through 589, all of those people are yeses?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
The coroner is, just so you know, coroner is Mr. Demando, who would be a no. Did not respond, but
I know who the coroner is.
Was the blacking. Alderman Rose, and I have a couple questions as well. Alderman, go ahead.
Thank you. I have received a lot of calls about this. I've answered a number of them. I apologize to those who called me, and I was not able to return all of the calls that I received. I'll echo what Alderman Bram said, and those of you who are not in the 2nd and 3rd Ward may not fully appreciate, you probably have gotten a greater appreciation for it in the last 22 months, that sidewalks are an incredibly contentious issue. They always have been. I suspect they always are going to be that. Contentious issues are always decided in America by a majority vote. This one has been decided by a majority vote. What we voted on before was the establishment of the SSA. We did not vote on a specific plan. This is not like conditional use where you have to have approval of a site plan by the council. So those who think that it is not. We voted on allowing a group of people to establish an SSA for the purpose of putting in sidewalks. That's what we voted on. We didn't vote on a specific site, on a plan. They looked at that plan. The majority ruled on that plan. I will tell you, in America, there's winners and losers, and I clearly know that, and some of you may know that as well. Some people win, some people lose. But there's no do-overs. There's just no do-overs. And so I want us to say that. I want to say that very clearly. I would also like to say, I want to just poke a hole in this notion that this is a compromise. This is not a compromise. I will tell you, in years to come, this is going to be called Elmhurst's Folly. You're going to look down a block, there'll be half a sidewalk, and someone please tell me how that can be a compromise. I think that is, I think that's patently ridiculous. I'll have to say, Alderman Bram, several years ago, we disagreed strongly about this. He put a proposal to say, every new home, we should require the developer to put a sidewalk in, and then before you know it, we'll have sidewalks. I strongly disagreed with him then. I strongly disagree with this notion of a part of a sidewalk is a good compromise. A part of a sidewalk is worse than no sidewalk. I will tell you, it is worse. I would rather see no sidewalks than see a part of a sidewalk. It's a hazard. That's more of a hazard than no sidewalks. You got a kid riding down the block on his bike, bang, and all of a sudden he hits no sidewalk. That's more of a problem. It's more dangerous. I think there are other, if we want to talk about a compromise, a real compromise is to extend the SSA to 20 years. Then it becomes feasible. Then you can do that. There is nothing that says we can't extend an SSA for another 10 years. All of a sudden the cost is less. We chose 10 years several years ago when we set up this policy, in some sense arbitrarily with the then city attorney, to say, well, that seems like a reasonable time to get our money back. There's no reason why we can't extend this to 20 years. That's a real compromise. So this notion of a half a sidewalk, I have to tell you, is not a compromise in my view. Why do I say it's more dangerous to do it this way? Like architectural renderings where it's always a sunny day, you look at a rendering, it's always a sunny day. It's not always a sunny day in Elmhurst. I have had the pleasure of campaigning in the 3rd Ward, as Alderman Bram has, in the throes of January, February, and March, right, with no sidewalks, and there I am walking in the streets, snow's piled up. I've almost been killed there. I will tell you that. So this is, it is not true to say that no sidewalks are less dangerous. Sidewalks make it safer. They make it safer. Whether you like them or not, whether you want them or not in your community, sidewalks make things safer. I am disturbed by blaming mothers and fathers of young children to say, if only they looked after their kids more, then nothing would happen. I will tell you that we are better than that here in Elmhurst, to blame parents and say, gee, if they just watched their kids better, life would be like, you know what? Got kids, what you know is kids are unpredictable. They are just unpredictable. So it's not necessarily true to do that. I will also say narrower streets do tend to be safer. Whether we should narrow the street or not, that's another issue. But narrower streets, there are traffic consultant after traffic consultant will tell you that people naturally slow down. It is a traffic calming method that's used in many different ways. That's not the point, however. The point is, I think that someone talked about this a no vote or somehow going against the stated will of who these folks followed the law at that point. We don't have a do-over process for this. I think that this is problematic. They followed the law. Will it have a chilling effect on people wanting to put sidewalks in their community? I can only answer that yes, and I'll answer it with evidence that's yes. The 500 block of Howard Street, a guy by the name of Woody Bessler, and Alderman Bram knows this, worked his heart out to get sidewalks, okay? Didn't happen. This is when we were diddling about trying to figure out what's the best policy about sidewalks. They followed the law, they followed the policy, and then in the middle of the game, we changed the policy. I will tell you, Mr. Bessler left this community for that reason. This is not, it's not a joke. There are all kinds of kids in that community. Does it have a chilling effect? You bet it does. Those folks on Howard Street, I dare any of you to walk up to their door and knock on the door. Those people are still unhappy about what happened there, as well they should be. Is it tearing this block apart? I suppose it is now. I don't believe in peace at any price. I do not believe that half a sidewalk is going to contribute to healing. I have to respectfully disagree with Alderman Gutenkopf. If I lived there and I had to walk outside my house every day and see half a sidewalk on a block, that's not going to make me heal. That's going to make me, that's like an irritant. That's a burr under my saddle every day to everybody on that block. People who don't want sidewalks are the people that do want sidewalks. So either have sidewalks or don't have them, but don't kid yourself that half a sidewalk is a compromise. It's not a compromise at all. It is a lack of will to say we're going to do one or the other. I will end my remarks to say I believe in sidewalks. I've talked to people over this last week who disagreed with me strongly. I enjoyed the conversations. We disagree about this. I think sidewalks are safer. I think these people have done what they should do. I am opposed to this report. I'm going to vote against it. I would encourage you to vote against it until we can come up with a real, if you want to, let's get a real compromise here. This is not a real compromise. Do not kid yourself that it is, and I urge you to vote against this.
Thank you, Alderman. Anybody else for discussion? Alderman Hipskin.
I agree with Alderman Rose. Yes, it is a compromise. I think that we should come to a better compromise. Half a sidewalk doesn't make sense. I'm pro-sidewalks, but I think that we need to come up with a compromise that really is win-win. At the beginning of Alderman Rose's conversation or comment, she talked about extending the SSA out 20 years. That's a fabulous idea, because it can prolong the cost, the overall cost of this over a longer period of time. Really, that's a good compromise. Actually, did you have a comment?
Yes, I do. Actually, it is not feasible to do that. We still have to front the money, $280 right up front. So all it means is that the residents would pay over a longer period of time, but we have to take $280,000 out of our budget to pay for it. So I like the spirit of the idea, but it can't work.
Alderman Hipskin, go ahead.
From a finance standpoint, we can make that work.
Very good.
We really can. I mean, it's not that difficult.
One other quick thing I'd like to ask the city attorney real quick, because this may be close and I may have to vote, so I'm not going to leave. I think people know where I stand on this, but what Alderman Rose mentioned about when we approved the SSA, we approved money, and the actual plan itself to narrow the street, does that affect or negate the SSA, being that that's on budget? Does it negate the current SSA as is?
It does not.
Okay.
It does not negate the current SSA.
And with the policy, the way the policy is currently, policy allows for democracy on either side, one side or both. So would that negate the policy at all of having because the sidewalks are going on the one side, would that allow the south side to have say in this, or to have a vote per se?
Not
the way our policy is written.
No, not in my. It would not.
Okay. Very good. Alderman Kennedy?
I'd like to ask the city manager a question. If we were to go back and say we would spend $280,000 to do the sidewalks, can you please tell me where that $120,000 difference might be coming from?
Well, the special service area does provide for the property owners to pay their 50% share over time and with interest. So the city does front the cost, homeowners pay back their share at the not to exceed, and I believe the ordinance said over a 10-year period and with interest. So it would be difficult to make it 20 years without revisiting issues, because I think the enabling ordinance said 10 years and with a maximum tax rate estimated to be the rate necessary to fund the estimate. So I think Alderman Hipskin was referring that the city financing plan does anticipate the need to finance this project. So going back to the SSA as proposed, what the project is now identified as to how it would work. The city finances it, but gets paid back over 10 years.
Alderman Kennedy.
Again, for the city manager, but we'd still have to come up with that $120,000 out of the general fund, correct?
In the city's budget for 10-11, fiscal year 2010-11, is the city's 50% anticipated share of this project, and the financing of the homeowner's 50% share with interest. So the capital improvement fund pays for the dollars out and gets paid back over a 10-year period. That's in the budget.
But it's in the budget for 160 and not 280.
Yes, 160.
Now, the plan to narrow the street, what's the cost of that?
160.
So we are within the SSA if we stay the course as is.
Yes.
So there's really the only thing that the 20 years would then do would give it would knock the cost down to the resident it'd probably cut it in half for 20 years. So if we stayed the course, narrowed the street, we're within the 160, and that's why there's really no change to the SSA if we take 3 feet off the north side of the street.
I understand.
And is that, Mr. Hughes, is that fact straight that doing that would be the same width as Fremont Avenue? Okay. Just curious, because I heard that fact. So, Alderman Pezza?
I think we're missing the point here. No matter if we put it over 2 years or 85 years, the point is the street still has to be narrowed. The sidewalk's closer to the street than policy says it should be, and it's not what we voted on in the first place, the details of the project. So no matter how long we spread it out to pay for it, it is what it is, and I think we need to stick to the issue and vote on yes or no. Do we want to narrow the street and put the sidewalk close to the street, do it this other way, or not, period.
Was Alderman Rose, in fact, correct when she mentioned that when we approved the SSA, we didn't actually approve the plan? Is that correct? In other words, how the sidewalk was going to take place? I'm asking for either city manager, board chair, or
Yes.
city attorney.
My opinion is yes. I don't know what
Okay.
city manager.
Okay. So we have the latitude to work within the SSA to meet the price, to keep it safe, to do it right. And those are my questions. I just want to make sure that we have that latitude. So we didn't approve a plan, so to speak. We approved an SSA.
That
Okay.
is correct.
Okay. Alderman Healy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple comments, and I respect Alderman Rose's opinion. However, I'm not willing to say so bluntly that this is not a compromise. I heard several aldermen say it was a compromise. Alderman Rose thinks it's not. I don't think any of us on this dais wanted to deal with this issue again. I think after we had that initial vote and Mayor DeCiani broke the vote, I don't think any of us were sitting there thinking, wow, I hope we get to deal with that issue again. But yet here it is. And my whole basis of reasoning for my support of this report and for what I deem to be a compromise is the vote was so close the first time. One vote, one household changes their vote either way, and we have a different outcome on the initial SSA, or the initial vote as to whether we even proceed that far. So then I asked myself, okay, what did the residents vote on? What did we vote on the first time? We voted on traditional sidewalks, 1 foot off the property line, for about $160,000. Okay, I wasn't for it the first time, but I respected the will of the council, and off it went. But then the engineering came back, and it's not $160,000, it's $280,000. But we have this compromise position that says if we narrow the street, we can do it for $160,000. So then I go back to and ask myself, would that have been enough if either of those situations were known at the time of initial voting? Would that have swung one vote, one homeowner vote? And I'm not going to sit here and tell you yes it would have or no it wouldn't have. But in my opinion, either of those are significantly different than what was initially proposed. So, what did I want to do with that? What would I like to see do with that? Well, because I do respect the will of the council and the fact that the 15 homeowners did vote for it and move forward, I thought, okay, this half a block proposal makes sense. We're very fortunate that 14 of the 15 homes all voted yes. And then if you go to the other side, I realize not on the west side, not everybody voted against it, but the vast majority did. Is it going to be aesthetically pleasing? No. Would I move onto a block that had half a sidewalk? No. Do I have them in and around my neighborhood where there's sidewalk and then no sidewalk? Yeah. But would I move there? Probably not. But I'm not willing to sit here and say they got to either go back to square one or no. I'm willing to say that this, in my opinion, is a nice meeting in the middle. Now, what happens down the road if home ownership changes on the west side and those residents, should we put the 50-50 sidewalk replacement, or in this case, they can install them at 50-50, one resident can do that. Will it take time to get the whole block? Yes. Will the whole block ever be completed? I don't know. I hopefully don't know. But to me, it's all about the initial vote. And the two alternate proposals, or the initial proposal and then the alternate, were so dramatically different that I don't think we can just simply say one or the other. I prefer to think this is a decent compromise. Is it perfect? No. Is the corner house going to be happy with this? Probably not. Are the homeowners on the west side that wanted sidewalks going to be happy with this? No. But are the majority of homeowners going to be at least say, okay, it's the best of a bunch of bad options? In my opinion, yes. That's why I'll support the report. Thank you.
Alderman Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I respect Alderman Healy's comments, and I would like to say it's refreshing that Alderman Rose and I agree almost 100% on
Startling,
this
actually.
issue. Even though we're from the same ward, we don't always see eye to eye, just like any alderman up here. And we've been through this in our ward, and actually, like Alderman Rose referenced, Howard Street ended up, because of the policy churn, as I will call it, ended up not getting sidewalks and don't have sidewalks today, even though they followed the policy, even though they did everything letter of the law, at least in my opinion. I think that there has been a lot of surprises on Gladys. Gladys is a little bit unusual. It's longer than a typical block, at least here in the city of Elmhurst. But what I try to look at is I try to look at the sidewalk policy. And I know it's just a policy, and I keep hearing that from the other side of the argument. It's just a policy, you don't have to follow it, the letter of the law. But I want to follow it because it's policy, and we have so in the past, as close as all possible. I don't know if creating a half a block of sidewalk and the other half not, and the engineering nightmares in the future, if it's a good thing or a bad thing, or if you don't want to worry about it now or you don't want to worry about it now. My concern is we're elected to make tough decisions. We voted on it. It was a tie vote last time, and the mayor needed to break the tie last time. We voted on the SSA. We should be voting on, even though the recommendation does direct us elsewhere, on the SSA tonight, to cancel it or to keep it alive. I'm not sure if narrowing the street's a good idea. I agree once again with Alderman Rose that it is a calming mechanism. Van Auken, the street that I live on, is the alternate to O'Hare when they get busy. It is so wide that an airplane could land, I'm joking, an emergency situation on Van Auken. It is a very wide street, and cars subsequently drive, I will just say, a little bit faster than they should on Van Auken. So I actually think narrowing the street's a good thing. The problem I have with that proposal is having the sidewalk a foot or two off of the curb line. You know, we want safety. I want to see safety from what our policy says, and that's a foot off of the property line. I don't know, I believe that area has the curbside mailboxes, if I recall correctly. So does my area. I went to the post office today, and the kind gentleman there actually left it underneath the door for me to reference because I couldn't make it there before they closed. We have, according to the United States Postal Service, there's specific guidelines for the curbside mailbox. The mailbox itself is 18 inches. If you only have a 2-foot parkway, it's going to be pretty darn tight to even put in the curbside mailboxes. So I have concern about just that 2-foot parkway. It might be done, but it's going to be darn close. And as those of you who have curbside mailboxes know, in the winter, a nice snowplow goes with a little bit of snow. You're fishing for your mailbox in the snowbank. So there's a lot of other logistics to this, and I think that the recommendation kind of clouds things for me, so that's why I've been sitting on the fence. I'm going to stick with a no vote on this because I don't think that it's the right thing or the right thing according to the policy or the safe thing to do to have half of the block with sidewalks. We need to make tough decisions on this dais, and I'm here to make that tough decision. And that I encourage everybody else for a no vote on this current recommendation.
Alrighty. Alderman Gutenkopf.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And just for the record, I'd like to note that the very first house I lived in Elmhurst was at 256 Oak Lawn. It's the only house in the block with no sidewalk. How I ended up at a piece of property that didn't have a sidewalk is beyond me. But my point is, it happens. And it's not the end of the world. And the kids that rode their bikes on the street didn't go careening off the end of the world, off the flat edge of the earth when they came to my piece of property. They either got off their bikes and walked, or they rode across the grass. It really wasn't, you know, they could see that there was no sidewalk in front of my house. But what I really wanted to say is that whether or not we saw an engineering plan when we were discussing this the first time, we approved an SSA predicated on certain assumptions. Alderman Healy outlined those assumptions very nicely. The project that we initially approved has changed. The arguments that were made by the north side of the block about why they didn't want sidewalks on the south side of the block didn't really sway anything with me because they weren't paying for it. It was the other side of the street. I don't have a problem with it. You know, if the people who didn't want sidewalks were going to make an argument that other people who didn't pay for them were going to walk on them, that really didn't sway it for me. But now we're doing something that's going to affect the whole street. And I'm not sure that I can support a solution that ignores the wishes of the residents on the other side of the street that are now affected by how the engineering changes their access to their driveways, or the way they park, or a variety of things. And I heard from at least one resident who has a driveway design that makes it very difficult for her to get in and out
whenever there are cars parked on either side and across the street. And narrowing the street could exacerbate that, which means now we have to go back and look at the parking around her house and figure out what we can do to make it easier for her to get in and out. So narrowing the street for me brings up this question of who gets to weigh in an opinion on it. And the original SSA did not take into consideration the opinions of the people who weren't affected. Except now they're going to be affected. I want to hear what they have to say. And I don't think that we can proceed with the original project without allowing some mechanism for all of the people who are now affected by the project. Do we have a legal right to proceed with the SSA the way it was originally structured? Sure we do. But a legal right is not a moral right. And I think we have to take a moral position here about who gets affected and who doesn't. And I don't think it's something that I want to be associated with as a city official to say, I've got a legal right, I'm going to just charge ahead and do this, without creating buy-in, without considering the wishes of all the people affected. Of course we have a legal right to do this. The SSA was structured to put in sidewalks, and we can do anything we want to put in sidewalks. But I don't want to be associated with that. I don't want to be part of that heavy-handed imposition. And for all of those reasons, I'm going to reiterate what I've already said. Putting sidewalks in front of the people who want the sidewalks and not putting sidewalks in front of the people who don't want it works here. They're clusters. There's a cluster of 14 houses that want sidewalks. Put them in. There's a cluster of 14 or 15 or 16 houses that don't want sidewalks. They don't get them. Are there 2 houses that don't get what they want? Yes. Do I feel badly about that? Yes. Do compromises make everybody 100% happy all the time? No. I'm really sorry that one homeowner doesn't get one and one homeowner does. But what works for the majority of people on this block is this report. And I support this report, and I hope that everybody else will too. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman. Anybody else for discussion? Alderman Wagner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a difficult issue, but I'm going to make an assumption that probably the 15 people that want the sidewalks moved to Elmhurst because it's a great place to move into. It's a wonderful city. You want to raise your kids here. It's got a great school system. It's got great museums. It's a great park district. It's a great place to live, and we thank you for it. That's great. The temperature, if you could take the temperature, if it was possible to take the temperature of Gladys Avenue right now, would probably remind me of being in Arizona in August. That's not Elmhurst. No way, not even close. I appreciate Alderman Rose's comments, and I appreciate Alderman Healy's and everybody on the dais. But quite frankly, that's just not the way we intend any resident to live. You're all on the same block together. I support this report. It does, I don't know what the exact definition of a compromise is, but this is about as close as we can come on Gladys Avenue. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Alderman Wagner. Alderman Rose.
I want us to be clear what we are voting for. We're not voting for half a sidewalk, okay? You're going to have to go back and ask these people, do they want it? They may say no, they do not want a sidewalk, and I think it is fantasy to think that somehow everyone's going to come together and hold hands and sing Kumbaya about this. It ain't going to happen. There are many things that have occurred on this block, and I agree with Alderman Wagner on this, that it's just truly unfortunate. But I got to tell you, you are not voting for half a sidewalk. What you're voting for is to disband the SSA, and they have to start all over to do that. We have no guidelines right now, no policy guidelines about setting up an SSA with half a block. We can't even do that. So to say that we could do that right now, our policy does not do that. I'm not sure why we want to impose a sidewalk on one guy on one side of the gang of 14, and we're not willing to impose it on, why stop there? Why not do the next guy to the next one? I just think we have to understand what we're voting for is not this, quote, faux compromise, as I call it, What we're voting for is to disband an SSA with no assurance whatsoever that there will be another SSA. None whatsoever. So these people are not necessarily going to get a sidewalk or even half a sidewalk. That ain't going to happen. So I think that's what you also have to understand. Be clear what we are voting for and what we're voting against. And I call the question.
Alrighty. Alderman Rose calls the question. I'd ask Clerk Spencer to call the roll, please.
Kennedy.
Yes.
Healy.
Aye.
Gutenkopf.
Aye.
Pezza.
Aye.
Shea.
Aye.
Leader.
Aye.
Rose.
No.
Graham.
No.
Hipskin.
No.
York.
No.
Nybo.
No.
Morley.
Aye.
Mulliner absent. Wagner.
Aye.
It's like 8 ayes, 5 nays, and 1 absent.
8 ayes, 5 nays, and 1 absent. The motion report for Gladys Avenue carries to cancel the SSA. I don't weigh in on this until I have to vote. I don't vote in this situation, unfortunately. But I will weigh in. We have policies, and we have policies in place. I think we're voting against the policy. I don't think that's a good precedent. We have people that went through a lot of hard work, and they had the votes. I also think doing a compromise of a half, again, we don't have a policy for that as well, as Alderman Rose mentioned. I think that's setting a bad precedent as well. So all in all, as a mayor, I'm not too happy with the way this has gone down. So, but the aldermen have the votes, and unfortunately, this SSA will be canceled. So, with that, I will go on to the next item, which is item 7, reports and recommendations of appointed elected officials. Item A is updates from myself. I wanted to address the referral that some of the folks out in the audience mentioned about a lobbyist. The mayor doesn't slip anything by this board. The mayor has to have a board that supports what the policy is. And given the climate in Illinois, and given the fact that we have about $2.5 million in Metro money that we're waiting for money on, it's in our budget, City Manager Borchert and I, after spending much time in Springfield, felt the way the climate was changing down there that it was important to have a lobbyist. We interviewed several. We are making a recommendation to go to committee as a referral. This was not going to be something that was signed and implemented without the board's advice and consent. Just like we would interview an attorney or interview an engineer and make a recommendation, that's what we do up here. And so the misleading comments by Ms. Heslop and Ms. Tamara Brenner, I think, are uncalled for, and I will address them as I just did. And the mayor seeks nothing by this council. This council is very independent. They're very educated. They're very smart, and we get things done together. And I'm quite frankly insulted by the comment, but it's okay. I just wanted to bring that up in my reports. This is very important that we secure these dollars which have been allocated, and if we don't secure those dollars, we have a pretty big hole in our budget. So City Manager Borchert and I both concurred that this is an insurance policy that is well spent. We'll let the referral go through the committees, and they can judge for that as well, the merit, and we'll bring it to the council. So, also the idea of incentives for car dealers and for businesses. We have many gaping holes in our car dealers right now. We have Elmhurst Lincoln Mercury that is vacant right now. We have Saturn that is vacant. We have several dealers that are struggling. But we do have a good location, but many other folks have good locations too. And many of those folks are offering incentives. They're putting in TIF districts. They're giving sales tax rebates. So we need to compete. And if there's any more time than ever that we need to compete, it's you know, in this economic climate. And what Alderman Leader mentioned about trying to keep our tax levies in tune, the more we could bring in sales tax and property tax from the commercial base, the less we put burden on our residents. And I will do, and I think this whole council will do whatever they can to make that happen. We are looking at areas in our community that need incentive and are blighted, and those are things that I think as a group we will be pursuing to make happen. So this is not a negative thing. This is a good thing. Lucky Motors was a company that was not here. There was a business, a building that was vacant, and for every dollar that they bring in sales tax, we will split that dollar 50-50 with them up to a certain point, and it's money we never had. So I think the council, with a unanimous vote on that, did a great thing tonight, and we welcome Lucky Motors, we welcome other businesses. We're here to do business. We're pro-business, and I think I could speak about, you know, virtually the whole council regarding that. But these are going to come up again in the future. This mayor, we've got consultants that we've got working, are out there with the fishing pole trying to get people to come in. And we need to be able to have tools to bring them here. So sales tax rebates, TIF districts, these are all tools that other municipalities have to offer, and we need to compete and step up. So that's just the last part of my report. And with that, any other elected officials that would like to weigh in on anything? Alderman Brown?
Yes, thank you. Just briefly, on one of the referrals tonight by, I believe it was Alderman Pezza and Alderman Leader, was about sidewalks installation and the policy. I appreciate their feedback. I actually was contemplating pulling this referral because it is on our pending items list for Public Works. We are discussing this. We've discussed it at least on one occasion, if not another occasion, and we will keep this for reference in regards to your viewpoints for your wards, in regards to what our current policy is and how it should change in the future. Thank you.
Very good. Anybody else for reports? Okay. On to item 8, other business. I would ask Clerk Spencer to read the request, please.
Therefore, it is respectfully requested that the City Council authorize the Public Affairs and Safety Committee to consider increasing the Elmhurst Municipal Code authorized number of liquor licenses in the category of RL, which would, if approved, allow Pints, 114 South York Street, to be considered for a liquor license. Respectfully submitted, Thomas P. Borchard, City Manager.
All righty. And this is a referral. City Attorney Storino, do we need to vote on this as a referral? A voice vote is appropriate? Okay, this is simply a referral for a liquor license for a new applicant called Pints. I'd ask for a voice vote if we could all motion or a voice vote aye or by saying aye to approve this referral. Please state by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, anybody opposed? Okay, referral goes through. And number 9, announcements. Anybody for announcements? City Manager Borchert with a hand up, and I think Alderman Pezza. I'll go to you next. Go ahead.
Just 2 quick announcements. In the packet for the City Council, would ask you to review at your leisure the memorandum from Finance Director Gaston relative to the details of the 2009 final assessed values as now printed by the county, the township assessors of York and Addison. And interesting to note, for the city of Elmhurst, for the year, the assessed value went up 0.1%. Residential went up 0.4 of a point, but commercial and industrial went down a little bit, resulting in the equalized assessed values that we've now seen on our individual property tax bills. And secondly, there's a memorandum to the council from the city manager providing the overview of the next budget cycle. Good news, we're done with the budget, but the bad news is we've got another budget. And a heads up to begin looking at the 2011-2012 budget planning calendar. We will be looking at the City Council to identify goals and objectives from the council's perspective, to go to the city manager to allow for a target to be painted so the city staff can hit that target with next year's budget. And to assist you in that, this budget cycle, there is the every other year city survey, and many of the council participated in providing feedback on the citizen survey. We're, from a city staff perspective, looking forward to the citizen survey responses. 1,600 statistically valid samplings of the community are invited to participate in the citizen survey, and that will provide a significant basis for I think, goal setting for the city council and the city staff, working with the city council for next year's budget. Look forward to that. And finally, the ICMA Public Management Journal provided a evaluation of AAA rated communities on how they have been handling this recession. And I found it very affirming, frankly, to review those 16 different measures that AAA communities follow, and frankly, 15 of the 16 have been followed by this community with the city council's leadership in that regard. I think that's difficult times, but I think the Elmhurst community and the Elmhurst City Council are following best practices in getting through this situation. You might review that at your leisure and allow that for your information as we look forward to next year's budget cycle. Thank you.
Very good. Alderman Pezzo, announcement?
Thank you. Two quick announcements. The Elmhurst Historical Museum will be opening their new exhibit, The History of Magic. I'm reading the brochure, and it looks like some really interesting, pretty cool exhibits. Marshall Brodeen, Wizzo, from the Bozo Show, is actually going to be there August 13th. These are all free, so a lot for children and adults alike. Anyone interested in magic, it should be a great exhibit this summer. One of many staycation activities to do right here in our own hometown. And I actually wish we may have had a magician here this evening to address the sidewalk issue, but that unfortunately isn't real. But also, Relay for Life is Saturday, June 19th over at Barron's Park. All are welcome. You don't have to be on a team to participate. Please come join us. The walking starts at 2 p.m. Just walk the track, come say hello to people. You can help with sales of items, many things you can do. So I welcome anyone and everyone to attend Relay for Life on Saturday, June 19th at Barron's Park.
Very good, very good. Relay is a great cause, and we got a great mascot, I think, with Patty Peeps being our advocate that we're walking for. So, so I echo Alderman Pez's remarks. Also on the Historical Museum, and on Sunday, June 27th, is the kind of like their opening, and they're going to be cutting somebody in half at the opening, and that somebody in half is going to be the mayor. So if whoever wants to see the mayor get cut in half, Mr. DeMondo, you want to see? Although you were much nicer tonight, Rich. Please come out. Hopefully they don't really cut me in half, but it looks good. So I encourage everybody to see a great venue. Our museum does a terrific job, and I think that'll be very interesting. And Wizzo, as a kid watching Bozo, it's near and dear to my heart. So my Ray Rayner two-sided Cubs and Sox hat too. So anybody else for announcements? Hearing none, I ask for a motion to adjourn. Alderman Morley, Alderman Hipskin, all in favor? Aye. We're adjourned.